My daughter's sentencing is Thursday. It's been coming day said he's just been and you know I lost
Deb, can you hear us?
We are.
I just want to see what it sounds like. So we're not a Russ at the
Yeah.
end where you're like, I can't hear you. Deb.
Oh, is she able to unmute though?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Does it sound okay? Like, is the sound fine or is it weird like our last meeting?
No, it's actually perfect.
It's because I fixed it. I just want to let you know that.
Perfect.
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Perfect.
and yes, we can hear you perfectly fine too. So we will go ahead and call us to order at 18:04 with a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
Of the
States
United
of
States of
America,
America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under
under
God,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
That's always the challenge.
Virtual presentations are challenging.
Yes.
You gotta change your microphone.
Okay, have an approval for the agenda. Are there any modifications to the agenda that anybody would like to make? Great, I hear none, so we'll approve the agenda and we will go straight into our school board self-assessment workshop. Thank you, Vince, for being here. And also, you should have an online format that you can follow along in your email of the information that we'll be reviewing this evening. I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. It's great to be with you again. Hi, Deb.
Hi,
See you virtually. So
I'm waving at you.
it's actually kind of weird because normally I'm the guy on the screen and the board is, so yeah, now I get some insight into how this works. So great job. Everybody got a good cross section of data from you folks. Everybody participated and that was really, really helpful. So congratulations on doing your board self-assessment. Hopefully you had a chance to review the report.
I did.
You did?
I don't have it with me, but I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, I was going to look at Soren's
Yeah.
here, but I mean, I will say being new on the board, like I had to just put like in development a lot because I just couldn't consciously know if it was good or not, but I think we're making good strides. So that was my overall take. Like,
Yeah. So let me advance my slide and it should be on the new slide. So, I mean, you spent a bit of money on this and some time, but what do you think? What's the why behind this? What do you
The
mean?
kids.
I view it as a tool to start a baseline. And in a couple of years, as we have created a new board with new administration, we'll be able to retake the assessment and see what kind of strides and improvement. And then you can see based off of some of these points at that point, where we need to focus our goals for the next time. That's the way I viewed it,
Yeah.
a baseline.
I kind of looked at it as it would be a complete waste of money if we didn't follow this through over the next year, because a lot of those questions were thought provoking to me about community engagement and different things. And I'm like, well, it's great to take this assessment and be like, hey, I think we're good working on this, but really poor if we just put it on the shelf, forget about it, and don't keep working on it until the next assessment. And we're like, oh, we're still in development on that.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, it really made me think about our role in a lot of different ways than what I had looked at it as.
Awesome. Deb, you blurted kids. What are you talking about?
Well, I think it gives us a direction to help us help the kids with not just what we're doing, but making sure we're doing what they need. So I think it just gives us a really good direction with, helping the kids.
Yeah, Deb, thank you for highlighting that. And I think that that's a really important piece about this particular self-assessment board. So there's lots of different board self-assessment tools out there. What makes this one important is that it's directly related to the education science connecting school boards to student outcomes. So all these questions are actually little indicators. So they're a behavior that a board should be doing. It's just turned into a question. And so this is literally, you're asking yourself, what are these behaviors that we should be exhibiting to support kids? So Deb, you're spot on. Any other thoughts? Enid?
I actually think one of the benefits of this is there's some areas where I can see that we're all in alignment in how we answered, but I can
Mhm.
also see some areas where we're like green and yellow and red and blue. And I think it opens up a conversation for us in a safe space with a very objective question to say, I disagree. I think that we're here because of X, Y, and Z. And we can really dive into that and get a better thought of like, cool, what's our plan then going forward?
Yeah, and we're gonna drill into that. And in fact, I prioritize questions where there's a confusion pattern, where there's different answers. And so just working on getting clarity there. So yeah, we'll push into that. As you're carrying this interest to third party,
Forgot my
just
glasses.
walk it forward for a bit. This was actually a moment of reflection for me. And we had this conversation in the meeting, a couple weeks ago, but I remember when I first started interacting with this board, 2 years ago. And it was not the previous superintendent, but the superintendent before that. I think Christine is the only remaining board member. No, Deb, you were on that board.
Deb was on it.
Deb was on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the behavior and skill of the board then versus now, that the board and the organization is transformed to a point that you're now self-reflective. You've learned and empowered yourselves to a point where you're ready for this, you're excited for this, and this is a really effective self-evaluation as I look through. Great. Next slide. I almost forget. I make these slides and I totally forget what's in it.
I think this is gonna be even, in my opinion, more useful, having attended pre-conference, getting that whole science.
Oh, yeah, the whole guy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of this
Yeah.
is like about.
So
effective
when he
board.
was, he was doing the training, I'm like, this is exactly the questions that we just did.
Yep.
So it was really good to put it full circle and actually get the science behind it and the education behind it as well. So that was a full circle moment for me.
It all hangs together. Yes. So yeah, it's about how to measure your effectiveness, and also by doing this, you're sending a message downward through the organization that you're holding yourselves to evaluate continuous improvement. It's an important gesture because who would evaluate a board? It's one of the problems with school boards is that, you might be able to get another school board to evaluate, but that would be clunky. There's no one to evaluate you because no one knows what you do anyway. So that's why we do self-evaluation, but it's a commitment to self-reflect. Let's see. Yeah. Building trust, respect, communication improves relationships because you're going to have conversations about what you're going to do. And then you're going to follow through on that. And that's what cultivates trust. And that's what trust is. Trust is something we trust something that we can rely on. And that's what you're building is reliability in this process. Oh yeah, you're gonna do professional development. Yep. Okay. That's very fancy. You guys have seen this before? Do we need to go over this? You guys could probably teach this.
Well, I don't know.
You guys
about
know
I
that.
the
don't know
wrap
about
for-
that.
You guys know the wrap for this slide? Come on.
Russ was a couple others.
Yeah, I don't know about the teaching it. but-
We sat for like, it was like.
An
6
entire
or-
day.
Yeah, an entire day about this.
Yeah,
It was
you've
awesome.
already seen this. The 12 standards that are in
Mhm.
this self-evaluation are reflected in the 6 behaviors on the left-hand side of the screen. So this is a collection of research articles. Mary Ellen Gardell, that's from Lighthouse. So Lighthouse was late 90s, early 2000s. They posited a framework of the 5 roles of the board. It was a research project at Iowa State. I told you the story, where they asked if we do training with boards, do student outcomes improve? And they did that. They found that was true in Iowa, Texas, Montana, eventually Oregon. So, Central School Board leadership practices lagged out a little bit. I don't remember exactly the context around that article, but it's a research article. And then DeBerrickson O'Brien in 2016, that's the eight qualities of highly effective school boards that was commissioned by NSBA. It was a landmark research project. So, and it tells us these are the things that we need to work on, that we are setting that vision for what's possible for our kiddos in our school district. Setting the tone in our district, creating a sense of urgency, and aligning resources to that, tracking progress. That definitely came out in your self-evaluation, one of the topics. Cohesive teaming, what you guys have been doing for over a year now. Coming together with you, with superintendent and the board secretary, learning as a leadership team how to govern the board or govern the school district. Community engagement, another topic that came out in your evaluation, and then operationalizing our governance through policy. You guys know this stuff. You can start teaching it. These were the standards that we went through. Some of these are core, things that you gotta do really well. So like standard 11, board member conduct, ethics, relationship with the superintendent, gotta have that. Number 1, vision directed planning, gotta have that as well. Accountability is another one. Having systems of accountability and using data for continuous improvement and accountability. 4 and 5 go hand in hand. They really, and then the other one that we throw in is cultural responsiveness, which is another one that popped up in your evaluation. So here's your data, your overall data. So what are you seeing here?
We all agree we're doing okay with the touchy feely stuff.
With the what?
Expand on that for me, sorry.
With the what?
Culture,
Oh.
touchy feely stuff.
Oh.
Culture and climate. That's not really good. It's kind of what when I first looked at it, I was like, oh.
I mean, we're really high level. Just looking at this, what colors do you see the most of?
I was just
Developing.
curious how there's like 5 board members and you could have this disparity with the light, little tiny red, and big yellow and big blue. There's only 5 of us, so it's like kind of weird that it's that way. But anyway, go
So
ahead.
all the
All the
questions
questions
in
were
that
about-
section.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
The
why.
individual
Oh,
questions.
okay, there you go.
Individual questions make
I was like, I thought it was
Nice.
each question, and I was
Or
like,
each
that
indicator,
seems really weird.
or Think of each question.
There you
as
go.
Yeah,
a
I got a little
had
slow.
that happened to me the first time.
I was like, I was looking at home and I was like, well, which one was Deb? I was like, sorry, Deb. to pick on me. I was
Thanks a
like-
lot, Ross.
I was like, that was me right there, but who was there? No, I'm just joking.
So, and Tom Olsbury, you were in the pre-con. He did. We do have the capacity to do individual board member reporting. So if
Oh, I'm sure you
guys
do.
get-
Nothing's confidential when you do a
Oh
survey.
no, it's still confidential. So, but if you want to go there, we can go there. But
No, it's
That's-
okay. I don't really
that's
want to know what Christine
counterproductive.
thinks.
How about in 5 years, let's have that conversation?
Yeah, right.
again?
Let's when I'm off the board.
build some social capital, feel more comfortable. It's like, yeah. Anyway, a lot of yellow.
Claudio.
That's,
I
I
think-
expected it.
Well, that's kind of what
I
I
think
shared
that's
in
a
my
direct
statement.
reflection of the fact that the majority of the board is new.
Yeah,
None of us newbies can really feel confident that we are 100% effective and accomplished at anything. I can't.
right.
Well, and I would add to that also, it has only been 2 years that this board in general, not just new board members, but this board has gone to any sort of education conferences. So I feel like as we're starting to learn, we're starting to see where our gaps are, that we're really growing. We're in a growing cycle. And so, if we hadn't have had any of that education, we might think we're like in a great space. But when we get to kind of reflect what other people are doing, we go, oh, what could we be doing differently?
I noticed I really had to, when I was taking this, I was making sure I was taking it as a board standpoint, not as my opinion and reflection as a community member of the past board. So I had to make sure I was asking myself the question, am I viewing this as my opinion of the board in general, and that would be the past, or me. And that, so I feel like a lot of mine were yellow because of that.
That's kind of.
Where had I done it based on my opinion of how
Right.
the board was, it could have been different.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Like a lot of mine were developing because I looked at myself on the board and Jamie, and I know Soren's relatively new too. Like, it's just really hard to say, hey, we're really effective at this when we've only been doing it for 4 months. You know, but I think some were though, but there were a few that I was like, hey, you know what? I think this board is really effective at this. Like, I think like the superintendent goals and the stuff that she does, I think it is effective as a board because I think some of that stuff really resonates with me quickly. Where some of the legal stuff and a lot of this other stuff, I was like, well, I don't
here's-
even know what that ABC one is yet.
Here's
so-
one that hung me up is like, community involvement.
Right. Mhm.
We're all very present in the community. However, are we effective in tying that engagement back into our board success?
Yeah,
I
there you
feel
go.
like we're
Not.
developing or ineffective in that. We're very present and effective and accomplished in the community as far as being involved and volunteering and being present and supporting the kids. But I don't think we are in pulling the community into.
It's funny you ask that because at the tree lighting, at the tree lighting, someone asked me a question, like my first question in the community about a board member that I wasn't expecting, like, so how often is an attorney present at your board meetings? And I was like, oh, that's odd. Why would you ask that? But in my mind, my quick response was, well, almost every executive session, there's an attorney. And they were like, oh, well, that's really good to know. And it satisfied him. And I felt really confident about moving forward. But
It's
I
like I
thought,
had
what,
to,
what an unusual comment to get from
Yeah.
a community member of just like, how often is an attorney present at your board meetings? I was like, should there be one every board meeting?
well, I had to say, I had to say, well, I marked it as green, but I'm like, but wait a second. There's nobody here. There's nobody
Right.
online. So do we really have community involvement with our board? Or are we just involved in the community?
Maybe we're so
That's
involved,
a-
they don't need
that's
to
a
be here.
much deeper conversation about
Yeah.
the board's role in community engagement and what is that?
So that's where I had
That's
to
a-
really
It's tough.
pull back and.
It's Jamie, look at it as we're so good at it, they're not here.
I feel like that would be illustrative.
They won't.
I'd
They
be
won't.
I know they won't,
afraid
but-
of those.
I think, well, I
results.
think there's a way that we're like, for the integrated guidance process, we have to do something like this, so.
Yeah, nobody replies.
That would be, well, this would be something that we could then sit down as a group and say, hey, how do we frame some of these questions that it's community based?
Or
Yeah,
how do we share even where we feel like we're not doing a great job and how we want to engage better and bring that back, just like what you were just saying. I want to bring my involvement back to this board and I don't feel like we're doing that effective enough. I need to hear from the community how I can do that differently, how this board can do that differently. I think it spawns different questions.
absolutely.
That would be a great use of surveying the community. That's something that the community would probably have some good thoughts on, because most community members have no idea what you do. But community
That's an
engagement,
understatement.
that's
That is
something
true
that
because
they can-
until I
they
got
can-
elected to the board, I didn't know what I
I was
did.
gonna
either.
say.
I was pretty much in the dark. I thought we had a whole wealth of power I didn't know we didn't have.
So, I mean, when I looked at this, I was like,
Your power's
Yeah,
in
this
your
is-
vote, Russ.
these
There you
results totally make sense.
Which I couldn't hear, but
So you're a board that's a board and school district that's going through rapid growth.
Absolutely.
I mean, doing the self-assessment, I mean, it's like, what time frame do I use to answer these questions? It's really a moving target. You guys are really changing and growing very quickly.
Deb and I are gonna have a different take on what our growth looks like
Mhm.
Absolutely.
versus newer
Sure.
people because of the
Right.
experiences that we've had.
Well, and the other piece is that you've had a really steady regimen of development work for 2 years now. And so you're hypersensitive to these questions.
so you're saying Deb and Racine are all in the blue.
No,
So-
actually.
No.
I'm just joking.
Well,
I'm
I'll
just,
just-
Racine's pretty
speak for
critical
myself.
of herself.
I know. I'm just messing.
So it totally makes sense that you have high expectations for your performance.
Mhm.
For sure.
And you're not there, you're not where you want to be. That's the take home message that I'm taking from just looking at the aggregate data.
Well, when I looked at it first too, I was like, hey, at least I'm not alone. I thought we all were like on the same path. Like, yep, we're all developing. We need to grow. But that's good.
And so I can show you on my cheat sheet, I get a cheat sheet that
Okay.
gives me underlying data. But one of the things we're looking at percent of incongruence. And so it's this column on the left. And over here, And if it's high, incongruence is disagreement. If there's a lot of disagreement on the board, this would, if it would show up as red. But you don't, you're white and green,
That's wonderful.
which means, yeah, you're seeing things clearly as a group. That's a really good sign.
Right.
Where there's disagreement is where we have problems. We're
When-
not seeing things the same way. We're not, yeah.
I could imagine some of the people in the prior. I could
Okay,
imagine the
So
test.
where are you good? So strength and
Just
weaknesses. So
speculating.
we try and pick the top three and your strength, top three strengths and 3 areas for growth. So yeah, no shocker here. You rated yourself higher on standard 11. You're above 70%. So when, as a trainer, when I'm looking at this, I want to see the green and blue over the 70% line. So of all of these standards, standard 11 is the most important one, and you're there. That's good. So, I mean, I'd love to see more green there, and maybe next year, if we do this again, we'll see more green there. But for right now, hey, I'll take it.
Mhm.
This is good. So next one is community engagement. You rated yourself high there. This is the next highest one. And then standard 6, you rated yourself high in cultural responsiveness, although there was more disagreement there. Incongruence. So maybe you're not all on the same page, but you rated yourselves higher.
So I will say this, one of the things, cultural responsiveness was the one that I was like, what do they want to know? What are we culturally responding to? That was
Yeah, I was
like,
kinda-
so
I would say it was
subjective
kinda
in my
gray to me
brain, so
too.
I was like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna look forward to seeing what questions
Yeah.
now
Six.
kind of attach to
Yeah.
that as it, so like as we reflect.
Well, we'll take some time
Yeah.
to go
Standard
over some
6.
questions. Okay, next one. No shockers here. I was in no way surprised. You know that having vision directed planning, having a plan and holding the district accountable is your job. And you know that you haven't built out those systems of accountability. They exist previously. So you guys are building that and you rate yourselves accordingly. Not using data for improvement. You don't have vision directed planning and accountability stuff. Totally makes sense. No surprises. Okay, let's look at incongruence or agreement. So high congruence, standard 5. You were very clear that you don't use enough data in doing your work. Very clear about that. Accountability and culture and climate. Culture and climate.
The bottom
Standard
left.
7. So largely developing, 30% effective, but developing. And you know what? You've got some culture to overcome, so that makes sense. Where you have disagreement, innovation and creativity, not surprising. It's kind of an esoteric standard. It's a very high level. It would be a higher function, board function. It's not something governing boards have historically been asked to do. I mean, when we think about the traditional school board, that's a stewardship model with a system that's largely static. We go back to like the 1950s. We think about, all the people on the school board, it's mostly white men, silver haired, and we're keeping schools going. There's probably not rapid change in pedagogy at the time. That's kind of what we have in our head. Today, that's not the case. You are engaged in system transformation. That's a new concept. So totally,
I think
none
that
of us are clear on what innovation and creativity looks like, in school governance.
Well, I think it also, I would say innovation and creativity can also, I think, kind of become a little bit blurred because that's operational as well. And so
Sure.
where we work with the superintendent, that's through those goals and those standards to allow her to kind of implement that in the district. But I also like being able to have that relationship where we can present ideas or have we thought through, have we talked through. But when we sit at the board table, that's not our space to necessarily critique operations or things like that too. You know what I mean? So that one gets a little cloudy for me, for me personally.
Well, the question number 1 says board members create time and opportunities for their own creative thinking. As a new board member, I'm so focused on making sure that I'm following the code, the ethics and the accountability piece, that creative piece and individual thinking is going to come as I get more comfortable in the
Sure.
role. And again, it pulled in community involvement, and that's only going to get better and be able to, narrow down some behaviors specifically in these questions as experience comes.
Absolutely. Next one was standard 11. That's your bread and butter one. Board member conduct and ethics, some disagreement there. So a little more disagreement. We'll talk about those. We're going to pull those out. I'm not completely shocked there because you guys are still learning this and working on it. So I was not completely shocked. Cultural responsiveness, definitely that's where you had the most disagreement. Any questions, comments, anything popping out here that pop back to strengths and back up to ratings? Anything interesting
Again,
there?
this is very operational.
I think we're perfect. Let's wrap it up.
Okay, moving
I'm
on,
just
top
joking.
that we go right into the report. Okay. So this is where we get our reports out. Deb, you have access to the report, yeah?
Yes, online. I have it open.
Awesome. So let's go to standard 11 straight away. Start there. And
Let's make that standard one.
I don't know why Tom did it that way.
Right. I zoom down 11 and get to the beginning. It's all good.
So I wanted to start with question 71. So question 71 asks, each member or states each member of the board understands and respects the distinction between the board's responsibilities and the superintendent's duties. And I was really, this is a check-in. What's going on here? You guys are all over the place.
Can I say?
Yeah, sure. Jump in there.
So from what we
I
were
don't
to
even
what we
remember
are is not the same. So the lines were skewed for the first several years for me of operations versus board duties. And so I think that's part of it is we weren't taught properly the lines that we need to walk in.
I want to think I answered this effective. Sorry to cut you off, Deb. Are you not done?
No, that's fine.
But I think I would never answer it accomplished because I didn't think I think I answered effective. It's hard to remember, but I think because I don't necessarily absolutely understand exactly all of them yet either. I think I do, but I think I only say I'm one of those people that only gives 5 stars when I know I have 5 stars, right? Like when I'm absolutely satisfied. I think that going to the first training in Salem, even though I made it only to the pre-training day, was really enlightening to me. And I think your training mostly was the biggest reason I figured out the board responsibilities versus superintendent, which is why I made the comment earlier. Like when I ran for the board, I had no idea how little power we had, or maybe I wouldn't have ran. Because I know I'm going to say this honestly. I had this conversation with my wife the other night. So I'm so passionate about certain things that I feel like my voice is minimized as a board member in the community because I can't vocalize what I really want to vocalize and what I stand for. And yet I don't have the power on the school board to make the changes that I want to stand for. And that puts me in a very difficult position because I'm very passionate about certain things and my children go to the school. And actually it's enough of a difficult position that I thought about resigning in the near future. If not immediately, but down the road, because I feel like as a parent, it's more important for me to vocalize for my children that are in the school than as a board member vocalizing for the school in general. That I think though, when I shared with someone in the community about running for the board and not truly understanding the board's role is very difficult when you are a parent. Like I was like, why don't all board members have kids in the school? And now I kind of feel like I wish I didn't have kids in the school because I get this secondary amount of information that is very difficult for me to do. Even at parent teacher conferences, I found myself having to like preface this as like, well, I'm on the school board, but this is just as a parent. Yeah. And because I'm so vocal and passionate about kind of my beliefs, I feel like I might put myself in a particular dilemma at some point, having to walk this fine line and not really being able to advocate for my kids, right?
So,
Yeah.
That was
I
a lot
agree with
said
that,
about a
and
little.
Struggle with
Yeah.
that.
I
Oh,
think
it's big.
I think I selected developing in that I'm constantly, okay, am I approaching this from my parent passion or my community passion? And to answer your statement, I struggled with that as well, Russ, but I know that my power's in my vote.
Right.
So
Right. And I
I
kind of came
get
to
to
that
vote
today,
how I
which is funny
believe.
enough. Driving in, I was thinking to myself, right? But it all is the long term, right? It's not just the day to day.
You can't build Rome in a day.
I mean, I never really quit anything,
But,
just so you know. But there's a couple of things. And so this comes down to community involvement. So there's people in the community that have approached me with things just in the last few days that are very difficult for me because I can't address them. And I also feel very difficult going to Krista or the board with them because they're very personal. And so it does put you in this particular place where if I were just a parent, I would be at the next board meeting asking and demanding reasons and whys and answers, right? So that's just, just one of those things.
That's what your one-on-one meeting with Krista is about.
Which I haven't had yet.
Come on, Russ.
I know.
I've been trying really hard.
We will
to
have one soon.
keep my parental issues even out of that meeting. There's always time, like anything else, I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm gonna save that for a meeting that I've scheduled separately. Just to make sure that I delineate that board stuff from.
I guess like I
But
have a
just
real
remember,
important
she's still
question.
very approachable
No,
as a
no,
parent.
it's not Krista. That's the problem, right? It isn't.
But
The
she's
problem is I
person
need
that
to
can
know
solve.
when do I have to approach Krista with the problem? Because I feel like when someone approaches me, I don't know that that means arbitrarily I go to Krista because does that violate their trust? And is it my responsibility to communicate that? So what I told them is they should go to the superintendent. Now the problem is I don't know that they will. And now I know 3 people that are in the same position. So then it becomes kind of like this thing in my mind where I'm like, okay, maybe I need to talk to Krista and just not bring up the names and say, and I did, I actually texted what I need to talk about, but it really should be one-on-one. But I guess it all comes into this culture and community because we're in such a small town and this is the problem. Like if we lived in Portland where my kids went to school in the Portland School District, I wouldn't even bat an eye because I wouldn't know half the people that were even involved in it. Or my kids' teachers, right? But because we're in LC and it's so small, and I'm like a really visible person in this town, as most of us are, but not all. It's perplexing.
I think, so I had to rely on this recently. We have an agreement with our superintendent that we will bring things to her. It's in her contract. Like we will bring them to her before it becomes an issue. I see something, I hear something. Hey, I need to let you know. I need this to be on your radar because I anticipate this might be a bigger issue so that she can operationally impact change. And I will say this is year 3 and literally the light bulb is just going off in my head on why I don't tell the community that I can solve their problems or have those engaging conversations because it's not that I don't want to engage with people. It's that I will cause chaos if I get involved in the operations of things, because this is the only person I govern right here.
Right.
That's
And that's what I said. It's like,
I don't have any.
it's not
authority,
my
but the 5 of us
thing.
together make a decision. So that's where, like, when I look at this, I go, I see this as we're not on the same page on either how to escalate or what where we draw the line on how we
right.
stand for things. Like not stand for things, sorry, how we respond to a situation. Like, I think that for me, I've had to teach myself, is this an operational issue? And what do I need to say in an operational situation? Like, how do I say, I hear you, but I have to remove myself. And there's been harder conversations where I've had to say, I can't hear about this because if I do, I'm going to have to recuse myself at a spot where I can have a voice.
She said that to me before.
Yeah, now I will say this, like
So these are things to kind of think about too, like, and for me, in the heat of the moment, I never respond super well. So I often have to like, how would I handle a situation? And so there's been a lot of reflection in that.
Oh yeah, I
space.
told 2 DAs and their person to F off today. So that's how I handle things when I get emotional. But I will say this, like I've never had a problem with not being I don't try to provide solutions.
Yeah.
What my wife happened to be present when this one person was talking, and when she walked away, I said, it's like the boy who cried wolf. Some people complain about a lot of things, but when they get to one thing that seems very important, you don't know how to discern that because they complain about everything, right? And so for me, it's like, I guess I need to get a better relationship with Krista because we just haven't had those one-on-one meetings. It's not her fault. She always tries. I haven't been able to be there in the way of just being able to express like what I hear, and maybe she can substantiate that with other things she hears. I've been very much happy to say, you know what, all I can do is tell you to talk to the superintendent, really. That's all I can do. The problem is having kids in the school, it also brings questions to my mind, right? That's the problem that innately affects me, where I want to jump up and be like, oh, I want to champion this because I feel like as a parent, this is an important issue.
So great conversation. You're asking the fact that you're even asking the question and feeling that tension between your two roles is exactly where you're supposed to be. And I wish I
That
could,
gives us all
I
encouragement.
wish I could tell you it gets better.
It's
But
It's
you're
a fine
always-
line.
You're always going to be balancing that
Right.
if you have kids in the district.
We're
And that's just
tight
The
walking.
way it is.
Tightrope.
I really appreciated your comment saying, I need to build my relationship with my superintendent, because the way you're talking about yourself as something separate, when in fact you're really a leadership team serving the whole district.
right.
So Krista's just one human. She can't be everywhere.
Well, and just so you know, Krista, I tell everyone, I go, I really believe in our superintendent, and I believe she'll make the right decisions. I mean, I don't have a long history of, I mean, you've only been here since July, so we're all in that same boat. That's always my preface, right? The challenge is like, you look at things and I mean, last year I remember being at a specific board meeting when I brought up a certain teacher and I got silenced and Christine's eyes rolled at me. But there's not a lot of people in the community that understand protocol.
Right.
So they want to come to the meeting and they want to talk about personnel issues, and I'm telling you, they're coming, right? And what I've been trying to tell them is don't do that, right? Just go to the superintendent and talk, or have other families talk, because if you go to a board meeting, you're gonna get silenced. I told them this specifically. You're gonna get silenced when it comes to personnel because they're gonna cut you off because that's what they have to do. And so, but I also have a lot going on in my life right now, and it's hard. Like, I've been very busy and I have my own emotional issues going with other things. So all I can say is I think honestly, I would tell you this, honestly, I wouldn't have ran for the school board this year if I knew what it meant. But I don't feel like I shouldn't be on the school board. I just know that in my current life situation is a very difficult place for me to be right now. Right. Because I have this other level of like, I have a school that my daughter left in the middle of the day and died. Right. That I'm in legal action with. Right. And I realized across this point that this is very difficult being on a school board now. Right.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with an attorney about it on the way here. So there's a lot of things that I wish I just had a better understanding of, because I feel like being at that school board meeting in Portland, even though I wasn't there for all of it, the couple of sessions I was in, one in particular, was very difficult. It was very difficult for me emotionally, because my daughter's high school was actually informed she died before I was as her father, and when you talk about like the media, it was actually the media thing about shootings and stuff like that. It's very difficult for a parent. So there's just, I think the community, what I said at the tree lighting to these two families is, you just don't understand the board's role. What I would love is the community understood the board's role better, that we're just here to support the superintendent in her role and to help the community communicate, like for us to bring her ideas out. Like, I look at our role as more of, our community role is to bring the superintendent's plan and ideas to the community, not the community's ideas to the superintendent. And that's where I think I had it wrong. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like in my personal life right now, I would rather advocate the school's ideas to the community than Russ's or the community's ideas to the superintendent, in a way of like, I don't know, maybe it's both, but for me, it's a little difficult.
I actually,
Yeah.
I don't disagree, but maybe I think if we scratch just a little bit deeper on that, like some of the things that you and Jeannie brought to the board in the very beginning were like, we want achievement, we want this, we want that. And what we had to do is kind of go scale back and go,
Yeah.
well, in order to get achievement, we have to get kids to be here every day. So we
Right.
and why don't we know who's here every day? Oh, we don't have data on that. So those goals and those statements that you guys said,
Mhm.
hey, like, we want achievement, we want after high school readiness, like, I think that those are great things that you guys brought to those ideas, that
Sure.
community. But what maybe people aren't seeing is that we gotta start
Right.
at the ground floor though, to get to that top level of that achievement. And sometimes that's hard to see from the community when you're not involved in those conversations.
Well, and I think your statement, Russ, what I heard you say is that you feel like we need to present Krista's ideas to the community. And I don't agree with that statement because our goals is what she's operating on.
Right.
So
Okay.
our community goals, we need her to buy in and tell us how she can put operationally into effect the steps to achieve the community's goals. So I think I stated very early on that I really would love to have an education session for the community to explain the board's roles and responsibilities and how we work for the community and why we refer them to the complaint policy and how it's critical for that policy to work to actually step it through and follow every single step and follow it to the finish line. Because it is a long and daunting process. And I myself tried to, go down that process. And you get frustrated and worn out. But if you don't see it through, you don't have effective change, nor does the superintendent have the ability to make the positive changes that need to happen. Personal experience.
Yeah, and how do we do that? I don't know, but
Right.
because the
So
community doesn't just
that's
jump
where
up
we're
and join the
learning.
meeting.
Well, and I want you all to remember, this wasn't the culture 2 or 3 years ago.
No.
It was, we went to the school board members, they walked into the building and said, this is what we.
We wouldn't have been having this conversation calmly criticizing things.
Yeah.
This wouldn't have happened. I think this is
Couldn't have.
amazing. Like
Well, and that's what I started, like, I actually, like, my wife and I talk quite intimately about my overextension with all the stuff I do. And, I said that. She said, well, maybe Russ, in like 6 months, it's just gonna die down and become more routine because it's also new. And that's what, like, she's given me till the babies do, right? To make some decisions about how our life moves forward, which is May 4th. It's not just the school board, right? I run the Gleaners. I have my own business and do a lot of things, but, and you're right. Like, that's what I had to look at because I don't know. Like, it's very difficult for me, even though my kids went to school here. We moved here in 2021, right? Right, kind of at the end of all that craziness, right? So I don't have a lot of detail. I didn't care. I didn't want it. I'm not.
That's a
It wasn't
really happy
necessary
place
for
to
me,
be.
right? It wasn't necessary for me, but I have
That's
to
a really happy
imagine what
place.
you just said is probably the most accurate statement, which is right. Like, if we can have these, like, I feel very encumbered right now. I'm not going to lie. I feel very encumbered. It's very hard for me because, because the school essentially was culpable of my daughter's death, right? And that's a fact because they had a closed campus and they left in the middle of the day and she died. The problem with that is, like, I don't necessarily feel the school is responsible, but as a school board member, I found that it complicates things really quickly, even though it's a different district. And that was very hard for me today because I'm a dad first, right? And then I go through this range of emotions. It's very difficult. So,
So I actually found these questions somewhat difficult to answer because they're asking us to evaluate the other members, not just ourselves.
right.
Mhm.
And
That was
not
tough.
everybody has come and said, spilling their
Right.
emotional guts on the table like Russ. Like, if we all
Mhm,
did that and then answer these, we might have a different answers too.
mhm.
Well, and 72 is related. So that's the one that says board and superintendent trust and respect one another. So this one, we didn't have an ineffective.
70 or so.
I think
71,
again,
72.
developing, we're all brand new. We're learning each other. We're going through the steps to have the one-on-ones,
I
the
definitely
time
think we
together.
respect each other. And I think
Absolutely.
developing is not a bad case. I think we all respect each
So
other.
let's
Um,
take a perspective, flip this prospectively and say, what would it take to have more green and blue here?
I think time.
Time.
Yeah, I just
Very
think,
clearly.
I think in another
If you ask us
year,
this,
you'll probably have all green or blue.
And I can confidently say, if things continue to go and build in the direction that it is, it'd be green in an instant, in my opinion.
Awesome.
Because I think we're on the right path. It's just, we're on a new path.
I don't even remember the Q74 question. I find that's interesting. Like, board members preserve the confidentiality by
Yeah,
Can I
discussing.
jump on
things.
72 just really quick?
Yeah, sure.
I
And then we'll go
think
to 74.
one of the things that I needed to hear, I'm gonna call Deb out and then I'm gonna call Jamie out. So it's equal opportunity, ladies. As board chair, you know, Deb was like, Christine, you have to do better in communicating. Like, I don't like that these things are happening and I'm not getting the communication. And then, you know, Jamie brought up like, well, how do things get on the agenda? Why is that this a decision that's getting made in an office behind, you know, and it was like, okay, well, I'm glad that you said that to me because I can't change it if I don't know that I'm causing that frustration. So I appreciate that criticism, but I know not everybody has an appetite for that.
Yeah.
And I know that can be really hard to say those things. I think we're pretty lucky that all of us have pretty strong sense of voice and thick skin that we can hear those things and make changes. But I think it's just the continuing, you know, bringing something up, hearing what your, you know, cohort is saying, and then making perspective changes to it, not just disregarding it.
I hear you. I'll be honest. I felt a couple times like I was excluded from like a group conversation, like one about the new, you know, budget guy that I never was told to like, hey, you should go meet with them. And the whole board had met with them when I walked in that meeting already. And I was like, where is this guy's office? Two, even at the conference, like when you guys were all at the table together and I figured, did you guys just plan this? Like you're all meeting at a certain time and no one reached out. I mean, I had a peculiar situation because I was sick and then my wife ended up being with me, but I did feel like, oh, did I just miss the memo? You know, it is easy to get offended, but then I also look at it as like, I don't really get easily offended. I think Deb and I, on one event, felt excluded from something. I won't go into that detail because I can't remember exactly. I think for a board, it's very important to be a board all the time. And like with my Gleaner board, I've learned in a very good and bad way, if I don't message all of them the same thing at the same time, then I'm gonna get someone who has hurt feelings, right? So I think it doesn't have to be about the little things. For me, it's not the agenda for the board meeting, but it is about a bigger things that it could just be like a group message instead of just
Can't.
I know, but you can, but you can't, right? You can't necessarily, you can about things like, hey, we're all going to meet at 7:30 and we're going to do this, right?
But we can't all meet at 7:30 and discuss it because
Okay,
would
but
be a
you-
public
okay,
Okay,
meeting.
but let me just put it this way. You and Ristine and Soren were all sitting in Portland at the table when I went down there for breakfast together, 3 of the 5 board members. So clearly the 4th could have been there. What I'm saying is to prevent those kinds of feelings, you could just say, hey, we're all going to be at breakfast. We're going to meet up in the front at this time if you want to join us. Instead of it looking like, well, it's just the group and then you're excluded, or like we're all going to, you know, to have Fogo de Chao or wherever you went, the cheese dipping place, whatever it is. It could just be like, hey, we're all doing this. You may not want to go. You may want to go. You know what I'm saying? Like, but that I'm just using that. That really wasn't a huge deal for me. I'm just saying in the context though, I will say the biggest thing for me was meeting with the guy doing our budget that I had no idea like you guys were even doing. And I was sitting in that board meeting and everyone was talking about these one-on-one meetings with this guy. And I felt so embarrassed that I didn't even know he had an office here at the school, right? So for me, just saying as a brand new board member, that was a little bit off-putting, like, oh, am I just a new guy that they don't really care to have meet with a guy? Like, why did I not resonate in there,
That
right?
was Krista's direction based on individual questions and criticism she was receiving,
Well,
at least
no,
on my part.
I do.
She said,
understand what
you
you're
need
saying.
to meet with Dawn.
I do understand on that piece, and I think that everybody, what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, is everybody at this table is an equal,
Right.
and that
This,
it's that
that's
group
exactly
piece.
what
It's
I'm
like
saying.
going to not
The
just
chair,
like-
the co-chair don't mean crap. We all have an equal vote. And what happened in the Gleaners, and I'm just going to share this, why I had someone resign a month ago, is because they decided they ran the show, but they didn't.
Mhm,
That can't work in a board of equal votes.
mhm,
It's fine if you have a 30% vote and we all have 10, or a 50 and we have 10s, you know,
mhm.
but in an equal, it just needs to, so I don't take a lot of, I hardly get offended by anything. I'm trying to share examples just to be like open. But what I mean is to prevent people from having disparity, it's just very important to make everyone feel like their vote is equal.
Mhm.
And that's what I had to reiterate in my whole organization after that event is every board member has the same stakeholder. Like you have the same ownership, right? It's equal. We're all equal. I might be the executive director, you might be the secretary, but our vote is equal. And that's all I'm saying is you can meet with her 6 times a month. I don't have time to do that. I don't care. It doesn't offend me. I just want to know that we're all equal.
Mhm.
Fair.
And that's, I think everybody wants to be equal, like not socialist, just equal. Sorry.
Anything else on 72?
But I value what you said, Christine. I do. That my point was to actually say you were right? Because nobody likes to be criticized for anything really. And when you texted me this morning, and I was sitting on the toilet and I was like, oh, I had it at 6. And you're like, OMG. I thought you were going to say, OMG, you're so stupid. It's at 5. And you're like, oh, I had it. It is at 6. When I laughed because I just went about my day. Thank God it was at 6 or I'd been late. But
Okay, 74, moving on. Yeah, so this one is about, executive session. So board members preserve the confidentiality of items discussed in executive session. And I get that this board has probably had an outsized number of executive sessions over the
You
last year and a
you
half.
think?
And
I find this difficult though, because I don't know of any instance where someone has shared something out of an executive session. So I only said it seems difficult to me because I know I haven't. I don't think anyone else has. I would have not voted. I probably wouldn't have voted green. I probably would have voted blue if I had to remember my vote because I never vote. Like I said, I never vote green. But the people who are really worried, I'm concerned about because I hope that we're not
well,
violating that.
I think the board fully understands now that if you breach the confidentiality of executive session, it exposes you individually
Right.
and severally and jointly to liability, district as well, and that, but beyond that, it erodes the moral authority of the board. You're just not following your own rules. You're not protecting the people that are within your own proceedings. And so it just breaks trust.
I hope that
that
becomes all
happens.
green next year. I hope.
So
I hope we can all trust each other to keep that confidence.
I hope we don't have to do any more executive sessions. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, that would be great too.
for complaints.
I hope we don't have to pay any
Well,
more
I-
attorneys.
Superintendent
They're good
evaluation.
ones.
You can,
Yeah.
superintendent evaluation ones are good
We'll
ones.
just do it once a year, okay?
Let's save the attorney fees too, right? Like,
So those of you that have a report, anything else in standard 11 that you want to talk about? Let's get a chance to look that over really quick.
The only thing I would just add is even in the area where we have dissension, I would just say that it looks to me like it's experience based.
Mhm.
And I think each of us had different experiences. So I think that maybe, when we do take this again, I could totally see us just having a bit more alignment in those areas.
oh, can you see how we each voted?
No, I see the same thing that you see.
Even I can't see that.
I'm
Number
just laughing.
77, actually, like,
Mhm,
that
I
one
was just
directly
looking at that
relates
one.
to what you were talking about earlier, Russ.
Mhm.
Like, when do you, there's the line between a parent and a board member, and some of us, I suspect that I was probably one of those.
I think I put developing too.
Because like I'm still developing on that.
I think I
struggle
did.
with it all the time. So
Mhm.
like I'm not.
It's
going
a
on
very
that.
hard thing when you're at a like community event and someone just picks your ear real quick and is like, hey, what about this? And I'm like, I had no idea. That's a hard thing to answer right now.
Well, and I'm gonna tell you, I actually like this question because I think when you talk about parents who are also staff members,
Mhm.
they sometimes have trouble, like I've had
Right.
conversations saying, are you talking to me as a staff member or as a parent? Because as a staff member, you may know more than what a parent would know, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But when you're talking to me as a staff member, but coming to me as a parent, like we have to somehow find that line. And I do have a lot of staff members who are parents, and we are constantly talking about like, if you're complaining, what are we doing? Because if you're as a parent, here's the process. As a staff member, you also have to remember, like, I'm not going to talk about other staff members with you. Thank you for your concern. We've also had lots of conversations, I think, about perceptions. And I will be the first one to tell you that I do believe everybody's perception is their reality.
Mhm. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yes, but they also don't sometimes know the other side of that piece. And so you know, people might get upset, and I do appreciate that you telling them to come talk to me, and then I can say, hey, that's a principal piece, because it's also hard for me sometimes to be like, is this a superintendent issue, or am I gonna come to it as a principal piece? But I have to also remember that there's also that second side that people might not know. And so I do appreciate that, because like I said, I do have staff members, we struggle with this. Like staff member or parent, you have to decide which one, because if it's a parent, we can talk about it at 4 and let's talk about the issue. If it's a staff member, is it a complaint? And that needs to be resolved between 2 staff members.
Mhm.
Standard level. Great conversation, team. It's great.
Well, I just want to say, I really like our board. I like all the members of our board. And so for me, it was really hard when they asked board questions. I'm just like, well, I like them all. I don't really know from history if they did anything wrong, but I just want to say as Russ, I like all you guys and I think we're a good board, but I think I get confused about my own role and how to fulfill that. I really get confused because my wife is not type A. I am. And she always expects me to be the one to vocalize the issues, right? And so I don't, you're probably in a situation like that too. Well, your kids aren't here now, but you might, like, where you got to say, okay, honey, you go talk about that issue and I'm just going to be the board member, right? Like that's like your staff, right?
We
So
have
can
that
I-
conversation at home on a weekly basis.
But your wife works here.
Yeah, like I have to be like, if you want that fixed.
She's an
you-
employee and
yeah.
you're a board member
Yeah,
and you
but
have a
you-
kid here.
So can I
Yeah.
give you some advice?
Sure.
I called the superintendent today as a parent. I
Yeah.
texted her first and said, I have this question. And I said, I need to know what to do. And I'm not asking for you to fix it. I just don't know what to do. And she
Mhm.
pointed me in the right way. So sometimes as board members, we do get that. And so but she's not going to solve my problem. She's going to let me be the parent and handle it. But she's sent me down the right avenue to handle that question, who I need to talk to. And that's what's going to happen. So we have a little bit of access to get
Yeah,
a little bit of
I get
guidance.
that,
And
yeah.
I would say that I don't expect her to solve your problem.
No.
And that, but sometimes we.
No, and you've
have a
actually
little
been
bit
on
of
my
a
list to
relationship
call
where
all
we can
week,
ask that
and I'm
question.
sorry I haven't. I needed to, but I
And it's
will
always good as a parent.
tomorrow.
If you're going in on dealing with an issue with a staff member, letting your superintendent know that you're incoming.
Oh,
Because
I didn't
that
think
school
about
board
that
hat,
piece of it.
that school board hat is on.
Yeah.
And so if
Either whether we want it on or not, we're still
It's still
perceived
there.
as that
you know, and the
person.
teacher's gonna go, oh, school board member, parent is coming in.
I know I felt bad at the conferences. I just said, hey, I'm not being a school board member at all. Actually, I
Cool.
really
I
like,
never-
I like my kids' teachers really a lot. So I
I
was
never
like,
faced that at all during
No.
conferences.
No,
this
and
year
I-
with
you know-
Penn.
no,
was
I
nervous.
just felt it.
Well,
like
I was nervous about how they were going to perceive
And I
me and
appreciate that,
how.
because I've seen it not be, and I've had teachers come and be like, this parent wants to meet with me on their school board, like, then meet with them as a parent, and if you feel like that line's crossed, then you say, hey, I need to stop and we need to go talk to the principal about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think it goes both ways,
I
because
never
I also
felt
think
that.
that's the staff being comfortable with you all and knowing that you know your roles.
yeah, I just started it with saying, hey, I know I'm on school board, but I'm a parent today and I have no issues with you at all. Let's just talk about my kid, right?
I
Like,
see.
What-
Yeah.
What's
That's
funny is,
important.
when I went to our parent teacher conference recently, like I never said anything about being on the school board. He had no idea. He actually said, "You guys, one of you guys should run for school board." And we're like, by the
Funny.
way,
Well,
not to
There you
scare
go.
you, but it's.
And
There
I
you go.
think, again, where we're understanding our lanes. I do think it's important to do the best we can to remove our school board hat when we have parent
Mhm.
issues.
Mhm.
Because that opens up an entirely different can of logistical and legal issues.
Right.
Like, this is our person as a board, this is our lane, and this is the only place we want to be, because personally, I'm like, I don't really want to cause more chaos and dissension between the staff, because that's what happens. That's where that chaos lived, was when the board was doing that. So I
Mhm.
think,
Well, I do think that you should never feel like you can't be a parent. I really don't. I think that
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 is our
is your
number
number one rule, is to be the parent. And I think that's that, there was a question there about trust. I think it's about everybody trusting and knowing that everybody knows their rules. and having enough ability to go, hey, I don't like where this conversation's going, I'm gonna back out. But I don't ever want you guys to feel like you can't be parents, because that's what you are.
Good conversation, team. Hey, flip over to page 6. We're gonna go talk about
Just
community
there.
engagement. We're looking at question 12. So the board ensures that a vision and goals are collaboratively developed with input from staff, parents, and students, and the broader community. I think I know the answer to why there's some disparity in responses, but I'm just curious what you guys are thinking.
I just think it's probably because the goals haven't really been developed yet,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, they're beginning, but I'm sure I put developing on that because we are developing goals right now, so,
Ensures is a big word.
Yeah,
yeah.
it makes you wonder, like, when I was answering this, I actually thought like,
Yeah.
we're talking about things, does that mean we're progressing? Or are we progressing
Yeah.
and actually putting them in place?
Ensuring is when we take a look at the goals and ensure that Krista has done or we have done what we said we would do. We can't ensure that right now.
Plus, it's also saying input from staff, parents, students, and the broader community, which we know hasn't happened, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
somewhat,
So
but
I mean, I read that a little differently. I read the insured, but I read collaboratively developed. We really struggle to get community
Right.
input to collaboratively develop unless it's a hot topic that, sorry,
Absolutely.
they're pissed off about.
right.
So
Mhm.
that's where it's like, I want them to answer the surveys. And so maybe that's why I say, like, maybe if we put ourselves out there with our assessment of like how we feel like we're maybe not meeting the table, like meeting them at their space, that they'll come and meet us, then like to like olive branch maybe is the way to put that. But
Well, and
we can only,
Look at-
we can only collaborate as much as somebody will actually get there and do that with us too.
Yeah, I mean, at the last 3 school board meetings, no one's shown, I mean, maybe 2 and this, no one's shown up outside of the people that had to be there, right? Like,
I kind of looked at as a good thing.
Yeah,
That means
'cause
there's
they're not mad.
nothing major happening. However, that's not going to get us where we want to be if we
How do we-
don't have those
How do we
voices
get
at the
them to
table.
talk? Well, it's not even the school board meeting, but how do we get parents to respond to the surveys? How
Yeah.
do we get them to give the feedback when we're asking for it? And
Mhm.
we have that opportunity to really give subjective
Mm.
feedback there. I mean, it doesn't even have to be objective at that point.
Well, and I think the student section is also, yes, I know that they get, surveys and stuff about what kind of electives they want to receive and maybe some basic stuff like that. But as you know, I'm a big proponent of seeing the process start to get student voice at the table, whether it be in the form of reestablishing student government or a place on our board to somehow. I actually think they're the ticket to getting more involvement from our community, but I don't know how to make it work. So,
yeah, there's definitely a few girls I know that are interested in doing it, so. They're friends of my daughter. I wouldn't say my
and
daughter's
I
interested in
respect
doing
the
it, but
feedback that I received from Krista. Like, if we just go to them tomorrow and say, "Oh, how do you feel?" They're going to be like, "Meh, meh, 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 meh," not really productive and worth the time and the effort on anybody's part, really. So, we
yeah,
need
but
to
you
be
can
really
wrap
str-
anything in a good package, right? Like, you
can.
can make someone believe that what they're about to participate in is gonna set things forward in a better direction that's gonna make it better for everyone, and then they want to participate.
However,
Prom-
we have to educate them. just
I
like
mean,
we've
with
had
the
to educate
students, I mean, it's
ourselves.
easier than the parents, right? The students are captive, so you can kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, what I mean is if you're like,
You could be
hey,
like, take that survey.
you're
right here," and
like
they're
senior
"Okay."
class, whichever class performs better in this survey and we get the most in, you have a reward.
party.
There's a part there that you could do where parents are really tough because I've never seen a survey come home. Has a survey come home this year or last year? I don't know, but I've never seen one.
Yeah.
Did it come home by email or by?
Yeah, I
you know?
believe during, well, integrated guidance, you had to have a parent survey and a community survey. And I believe it came home I believe it came home via email and possibly on the Facebook page to take a survey on a Google Doc.
Yeah, well, if it came by email, it probably went to my wife and got buried in her inbox. But like, I'm just saying, like, we just like that one board meeting you're talking about field trip permission slips. Like, my one son just doesn't bring them home because he doesn't want to go. So it's like, well, you got to pry it out of his cold dead hands to get it signed, right? Then he liked the field trip after all that, which was great. All I know is surveys, there almost has to be, like, why do you take a survey online? Every time I watch a number of YouTube videos, it says, take a survey. I always skip it. Why do I skip it? Because there's no benefit to me. For someone to want to do a survey, there's got to be at least a thought or perception of a benefit.
How is your child's education?
I know,
not
but
the
listen,
incentive?
you guys do not like, look at some, okay, we're involved parents. Okay, I'm not gonna, Deb's here, was an involved parent. We're the involved parents. There's like 5 out of 100. Okay, I'm not being rude, but you know, these kids show up at your house and their parents have no idea what's going on at school. They don't ask what kids' books they're reading or what's going on in school. They don't have these conversations. So that's what I mean. Like, parents are really hard because the ones that want to complain just complain. And the ones that are just don't care about their kids don't care enough to get involved. And then the ones that do care, a lot of them have moved their kids out or are homeschooling their kids or like are really engaged, but you know who they are and they're always there on top of you, like, boom, they're engaged. But what is that percentage? Like 3, 5, 5%? I mean, it's just not much. And it's not just Alcee, right? This is nationwide. Parents send their kids to school to have them babysat and hope they come home with some kind of education. I think we have this awesome opportunity to live in such a small town where we could make it worth something, right? But it's going to have to be packaged in something that looks nice. I'm telling you, as a parent with 9 children, it's going to have to look nice for me to spend my time on it to make it work. And I think as a school board, because we are involved in the community, we could do it. We could get to the place that we have, let's say, what our attendance went up from something 40-some% to 63%, right? We could get to the place where we go up from 10% parent involvement in the school board functions to 40% in a year. We're not going to get to 90%, but it's got, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying, right? Like, it's just really hard. People are whether they're working too hard or they don't have enough money or they don't care, I don't know, but I just think Krista could make the best surveys and send them out, but if only 3 people answer them, it's pointless.
Right.
And I think the last one you did, right? You got like 12 responses or something.
2.
Oh, 2.
Oh, yeah.
It was a 2. There was a 2 in the
Well,
number.
but I also think, I do like the fact that you said, how do you package it? But I also think you have to be aware of when you give it. So like, for example,
Mhm.
I will be honest with you, the best time this year to have given a survey would have been at open house when we had 150 people.
Mhm.
Like we're going to do one in 2 weeks, like a STEM night. We could do a survey there and have people.
It almost makes sense to have a board member with a computer that's like, hey,
And when
There's
they
a
come to
survey.
get their potato. so
Yeah.
You take
There's a
this
survey.
and then you get your potato after you hand it.
Because I don't
That is a
disagree with
very
you. I
effective
don't
one.
disagree with you because I think if they just see in this email like, oh, the school again, delete. But if they're here and you get them in and you're
Mhm.
like, hey, we would like you to take the survey and this is why I also will tell you, I'm not a huge fan of like the robocalls and we stopped that. Because we're a small district. There's no reason why we can't pick up the phone and have a face-to-face, person-to-person conversation. Same thing with a email. I don't disagree with you. People are like, why do I need to take that phone? But if I'm like, hey, we want to know more about what you think our school should be like, would you take this for me? Russ, you're not going to tell me.
No, exactly. And that's what I mean. If it's just, I mean, packaged, I just mean like, if you make it important,
Mhm.
they're more likely to do it.
I
Well,
would agree
and
with you on that.
I don't remember exactly how that last one was presented.
I didn't see it,
But
so I
we
can't
have
tell you.
the valuable knowledge of knowing if we didn't have those grants and we didn't participate in that survey, that it affects the funding of our district. How we get that message out a little bit more, like this data is needed for the success of our students and the funding for this district. I don't know how to get that across. Big neon sign.
I will tell you as
reader
a
board, take
parent,
the survey, it's for the money.
as a parent, hats off. The eye test, what is it? The eye testing? iReady, sitting down with parent teacher conferences with iReady was amazing. I mean, really, versus before, right? I don't know if all parents figured that out, but it was so much easier to understand and for the teacher to go over and to look at the results. I thought it was really good. So I think parents even understanding iReady and how it works is important because I had no idea that the iReady testing also was coupled to the curriculum in this books.
And so maybe that's part of that engagement piece of it is tying some of the surveys that we're taking to some of the new testing processes to how we continue to work towards achievement and things like that. But we need your feedback. I mean,
Right.
I think that maybe that's where innovativeness comes in, creativity.
That's what you're doing right now.
Anyways,
Well, and maybe
Sorry.
we need to, I don't know, not that I'm nose goes, but like videos, maybe presenting. This is the why, not just an email. Cause you know, what did we learn? Most of us skim through emails and look for that trigger key point,
Mhm.
or it just gets deleted, right? But if you're liable to watch a message that pops up on the Facebook feed, hey, the
Mhm.
survey went home. This
And we
is
could have
why
a
it's
technology class
critical.
making the video
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
and,
I
you
mean,
know, like put it out
just
there in a fun
maybe a
way.
little more
Yeah, this
creative
is like
ways
down
to
the
get
road,
the,
right?
get the
It's all great
why.
ideas.
So you need to schedule a work session, to have this conversation,
Mhm.
okay?
Great. Cause you're like, Vince, I'm gonna get home sometime tonight.
we have them for 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, and you guys don't want to, oh, maybe you do want to be here all night, but it's just.
I haven't been
cool.
home yet today, but yeah, sure. Why not? Spend the
Question
night.
13.
Spend the night.
Board recognizes and celebrates the contributions of school and community members and school improvement efforts. My first question is, what does that look like? And the next question is, how can this be effective and not performative?
Hmm.
What does that look like in your board meetings? Or maybe not, it's not in your board meetings, but you guys rated yourself fairly high here,
So I think,
You said number 13.
yeah.
13.
So I think one of the things we may have talked about this recently, like we have these great reports from our principals that kind of highlight the kids, and it's soft and fuzzy and it feels good, but it's not business.
I'm glad that
And-
you recognize that.
And as much as I want to do soft and fuzzy, I want to do soft and fuzzy because we got the superintendent report with some of those excerpts in it in the week, or we got invited to STEM night, or we got invited to assembly, or, you know, we're recognizing kids at a sports awards when I don't have kids even playing sports, but I'm there to celebrate the school. Like moving that warm and fuzzy to that involvement in the school district rather than in a board meeting. That's my opinion. I love, we needed it. I'm not gonna say we didn't need it, because we definitely needed some warm and goodness in our board meetings, but
I'm like confused,
And
but
it can be effective as long as as your warm fuzzies are nice enough that people like them, that they are contributing more. Like, as long as it's effective, as long as it's effective. It's performative if nobody likes it and then stop coming.
So the danger, and Christine touched on this, the danger in question 13 is that boards will take part of their business time. You meet 3 hours once a month. You meet 12 times a year. It's 36 hours of governance time that you have to spend. So if you spend 30 minutes every meeting with staff reports, kids singing a song, we're going to learn, you know, kids are going to come in and you have second graders reading and things like that. It's performative and it feels great. And it's recognizing the good work that's happening, but it's not board work. So it doesn't need to be in a business meeting.
yeah, we haven't had any of that. So
Huh?
we read a couple things, or the principals do, but
I mean,
like
like
yeah,
the
we don't have
principals-
kids show up at the board
No,
meeting
but
and
I
see.
think the principals are giving us really great feedback of how things are going in the school. But if you're not at the board meeting, are you
Yeah, you're
hearing
not.
that?
Yeah, you're not.
You know, and so those are things too. And I am loving what's happening with our Facebook page, and like we're starting to see some of like this great stuff coming out of our students. I think that's great. But I don't. Okay, it's gonna
I get
sound
what you're
super- It's
saying.
gonna sound so critical. Oh, I don't need to be reaffirmed that our staff are busting their butts to get these kids to do the good things. We're seeing it in home and in the hallways and as coaches and things like that, because we're engaged and we're seeing that.
Yeah, like Heather Shunk does a really good every month of a Learn at Home, and it's really warm and fuzzy, and it's great. And I really often wish that could go to people other than just us.
Mhm.
'Cause
That's my
I
point.
know that she does a really good job of it. She's very effective at
There's
Learn at
that
Home.
community involvement.
But I wish that everybody else could see that.
I mean, they do. It's in the agenda. If they go to the board books, they can see it, but maybe it needs to be posted
Maybe there
there
should be like
versus,
a quarterly, whatever it is, time it to the time of the year, the fall festival, the winter solstice, the spring, whatever. I mean, I remember, so my kids went to Catholic school, most of them growing up, in elementary school, but middle school and high school, they went to public school. The kids here are the first kids to go to public school of our young kids. And in Catholic school, right, they always had these events to suck in all the families. Now, they often were raising money with, because private schools are always raising money, but they brought all the families in for these events. And it was either like the holiday thing or the Christmas program or whatever. And we could do that as a school, right? You could wrap it around an event like you may not be able to call it Christmas or whatever thing is today, but the holiday end of year festival, right? Where you can wrap all the families in, and then you can have those people highlight these things to the whole community. Because we would get a lot of community, it doesn't have to be during a school day, it could be on an evening, where you could get the community involved and they would know or see the videos. I'm just saying it as I'm just thinking out loud. I'm
I
not
think it also kind of brings the parents back to this is like that business meeting where they are coming here to see
Right.
where we're at financially and in our budget process and what we're approving goal wise is rather than the planetarium exhibit. I don't know. It's just a thought.
I mean, it comes back to this thing that's intrinsic in me is like I had this conversation with a pastor one time and I was trying to raise money for his church. And I said, well, does your church know where you're going? Do they know where the money's going? Do they know what you're doing? Do they know how you're building your organization? No, they have no idea. Well, why would they give money? In my mind, it's like parents coming to a school function, right? If you don't have any involvement in what's happening or any idea how it's going to do, why would you get involved? I just think when you paint these pictures and you build these, like I thought the open house was tremendous, right? And last year, did we even have one? I don't even remember having one,
no, we did.
but it was small, right? It was like little, but I thought it was great. We should duplicate that every 3 months. We should have another open house and call it whatever you want and bring all the families in and have popcorn or something silly and, cheap balloons or something and just keep that involvement because I didn't hear one negative response to that open house. I mean, everybody was positive, except for when the nachos ran out.
Yeah,
I heard I had a pregnant wife that was like, they're out of nachos. I'm like, well, baby, go to the Merc.
Some pregnant lady's husband came in, stared at me while I stirred the cheese, waiting for her to get her temperature.
I was trying to help.
Awesome. So you have the point.
Yeah, business is at the board.
Business is business. And recognition is important. It's a crucial part of engagement with your school community and the broader community. So,
Yeah.
So,
I think we could do it. Not
So-
at a board meeting.
and you've talked about a bunch of mechanisms that will work. Hey, flip over to page 17. Going for question 48. This is cultural responsiveness. So the board ensures the superintendent holds employees accountable for high standards and expectations for each and every student. And the question I have here is, how should the board do this?
I see this
Well-
through data. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
You
I
go
mean,
ahead.
exactly. That's what I was just saying. Look at the student data, and if the student data is improving, then clearly the staff is doing their job. That's holding them. The data is poor, then you're like, well, the staff, somebody somewhere is not performing, and then the superintendent can hold people accountable, or the board can hold themselves accountable, or whatever.
I don't know if data represents each and every student though well, because there's going to be bad data and good data. And I think when you get to each and every student being accountable, this is what brings me heartburn, right? I just had a parent complain that they're refusing to follow their child's IEP. And, that's each and every student, right? A teacher should never be refusing to follow an IEP because the IEP is set up for the teacher to follow, right? When that parent pulls their kid out of school and takes them to another school because they will follow the IEP, there's a problem. So I think that the accountability has to go deeper than data. I think it has to be driven by day-to-day metrics in the classroom that these children, especially the underserved population of our school, where their education is in, what's the word I'm looking for, but it's less than where it should be. There should be daily or weekly metrics to make sure that these teachers are helping these children not get further and further behind. And from my perception this year, it happens in every grade level. Not every grade, but elementary, middle, and high school. And I think I don't know how to solve that problem because I'm not an educator,
Mhm.
but I know it's a problem because I know 3 people that have pulled their kid out of the school this year for that very problem. So that's at least 3. So for me, that each and every child student is the part that's the hard part for data to measure,
Mhm.
because data just gives you numbers. It doesn't tell you which child is underperforming or
Right.
which child is getting missed.
Think that iReady tool that they're implementing is going to help with that, just because you do get the opportunity to have some individualized plans, and that data does show individualized information to the teacher. Again, ensures is a really big word
Mhm.
in my opinion, so,
Because the teacher has to be
So-
willing to use that data.
and that's
To
where
benefit
the
the student.
operations of Krista,
But one step back, sorry, I'm gonna interrupt here because the ensuring is happening with teacher evaluations. They weren't happening before because we were missing years of teacher evaluations, but we have an evaluation process in place now to evaluate every teacher. And we use that. So when we are ensuring that that there's employees are accountable for high standards and expectations for each and every student, as a board member, we ensure that because our superintendent has an evaluation system and tool in place that is equal for every teacher across the board. So then, like where you say like data, like you have to remove the data component of it too. That does remove that data. We don't get to see those personnel evaluations. That's not our
Our-
business.
Mhm.
But we do know that they're happening and that like their teachers
Well-
are having their like they're being reviewed and they're having what's it called when they sit in the classroom?
Monitors or
Their observations, yeah.
observation.
So like that's where that ensuring piece comes.
Well, how often do they happen? Like,
But that's the thing is, and
Is it
why I
annual or-
probably chose developing is because that is a new process. And
Yep.
again, we don't
Mhm.
have
Oh, I don't,
the information
I don't
of
disagree.
how, when, how frequently.
iReady
you know,
might be a
those-
tool. I think it's very
I think it's a
difficult.
tool that Krista's gonna use to,
I think this is a very
Yeah.
difficult question to
Well, can I say something here?
get
Yeah.
acceptance on. Or
So I've been listening to you guys and the question says all employees. It doesn't say about the students. So how do you hold all employees accountable? And so I think, yeah, the iReady and all that stuff is great, but I think we have to lead by example. We have policies, we have rules, and we ensure respect, or we ask for respect from all of our employees. Well, I think we have to show that first. And then I also think it's Krista's job to show that she's holding the employees accountable for their own behavior. So I read this question apparently a lot different than the rest of you, because I don't read it about the kids, I read it about the employees.
well,
the trigger is that expectations for each and every student, which is again in itself a very strong statement, like Russ said, is that looks very, very different for each and every student. And
Yeah, but it's holding the employees accountable. So that's where my focus is, you know, how do we set the example to show them, you know, the path that we all want to take? It isn't just about the students, but it's about the behavior of the staff as well.
So you guys are nipping at different parts. This is really about systems of accountability. Data is part of this. How you look at data, how you package the data really makes a difference. For example, looking at counts of kids versus percentages, or looking at averages. When you have derivative data products versus looking at individual numbers of kids. If we're talking about 5 kids, we start thinking about individuals and thinking in those terms. So it's part of how the board talks. So Russ made a very clear declarative statement about, as a board member, his expectations about the delivery of special education services. It's a very powerful statement. Said in a public meeting, you're sending a very clear message downward through the organization about what you expect. And you guys go nodding your heads going, yeah, you're right. That's the way it should be. is setting that. That's part of that ensuring. Also packaging that in your superintendent evaluation and in your, also your goals, which your district goals communicate from the boardroom to the classroom, what's expected. Superintendent evaluation is aligned to district priorities. We're using data to fill that in and allows you, when the system doesn't meet the needs of kids in a particular group, we were talking about SPEDS, we'll use that. It allows the board to ask the question, why? Why are we not serving these kids? Why are these kids not performing in the way that we think that they should? Because every kid can succeed. Each and every kid can succeed, right? We've already had that conversation. You guys, that's a core value for you. Okay. So it's about building systems of accountability. Okay. You will get there. You're just not quite there yet. I just wanted you to go through that exercise and kind of visualize what would that look like for the school board. And I think Russ, you demonstrated very clearly how you can do that in an informal way in a board meeting, but then making sure that you're getting reporting on those pain points, because there are going to be places where you guys are serving kids well. There's going to be areas where you're not. That's just the nature of K-12 education in the 21st century. Well, it's K-12 education ever since. Okay.
I think, for me personally, the whole premise of running for the school board was to try to find a way to make education something that people in the community put a higher priority on, right? And I think the challenge we face, and every teacher faces and Krista faces, is every parent puts a different level of priority on their kid's education. And we could have the highest priority on a child's education. If the parent has a zero priority on it, it's very hard to pull through. So my vision of a successful educational institution is to build the parents' priority up by involving them in the process of what it takes to succeed in learning. And I don't know how we do that effectively in a short time frame, but I think over a long time frame, you definitely can have these metrics that push out information, and we can celebrate the successes and help the community wrap themselves around these small wins in the beginning and have great wins in the end, right? Because every parent wants to say, oh, I send my kid to a school that has a 98% graduation rate, but 98% of the parents don't push their kids to graduate, or the teachers do, but I mean, the parents aren't at home pushing them as hard to graduate. So
you said in the very beginning of the chaos, what happens in a board meeting on Thursday night hits the classroom Friday morning, impacts the students Friday morning. I see our work, what you're talking about, that prioritization for the parents, we're the silent partners in the background. We're the ones helping to we support our superintendent to make those operational changes so that the decisions we make on a Thursday night hit that classroom, in our case, Monday morning. But in a way that we start building that priority and that successful achievement. But we are silent partners. We're so far in the background, they see operations running that. And we know that we're that partner to operations, but we're just not operational. Does that make sense? That's how I kind of see.
No, and I mean, I'm going to
us
tell you,
going.
I have never said a negative word about Krista or any board member.
That's not what I heard. Just kidding.
because I know that if I say a negative thing, it's going to be taken as fact, right? I choose not to do it anyway. I don't speak a lot of negative about anybody, but I constantly tell people, I believe in the superintendent. I think you should go to her if you have concerns. I trust her decision making. I would say that about any board member. I think if we hold that ground and we sustain Krista in her role, that the community will wrap themselves around eventually going, well, you know what Russ always says, he trusts her, and I like Russ, so I'll trust her until she proves him wrong, right? With me, trust isn't earned, it's given until you break it, right? I respect and trust people no matter what, unless they give me a reason not to. And that's what I tell people. And I think as board members, we need to do the same thing. I've never had anyone ask me about another board member. I have had people ask me about superintendents and teachers. I don't know why. They probably don't even know who the board members are. Like, they don't even know I am half the time, but I think we all should have that. Like, if the last thing we should ever do is criticize Krista unless she's sitting in the room with us, right? At that moment when it's her evaluation, because otherwise we're just throwing the whole system under the bus, you know? We're not perfect. I know we all may make a mistake, but that's my goal, is to not ever get caught in that conversation where I'm undermining the superintendent or the school to a person. So
Cool. So bump over to question 42. I'm actually going to skip over this because while you had a number of responses, I think you've already discussed this in pretty good detail, that you have work to do meeting different parts of your school community. I think you're aware of that. So yeah, you have this varying performance in that space. Let's go down to question 44, where there is again some really a broad array of responses here. The board has a process to review policies for cultural responsiveness bias. So
I'll say I didn't really know we had a lot of policies on
Yeah, I
cultural
feel like that's
responsiveness and
maybe a little
bias.
confusing.
Okay.
That's why.
Yeah.
I think if we discuss this question thoroughly first, you might see different answers.
I chose developing because I'm still learning all the processes for, I mean, I didn't even know the process of putting an agenda item on the agenda, let
someone-
alone how the policies are reviewed.
So someone marked accomplished and another was effective.
But we have a process to review policies, therefore, any of those policies would be reviewed.
But for cultural responsiveness.
We have those policies, they would be reviewed in our the way we review policies.
I would imagine I put developing, but I can't remember, but I would agree. I think, I don't know that I've seen a policy for cultural responsiveness.
Well, this is
And
not
by-
cultural responsiveness. This is a way that using cultural responsiveness as a lens to evaluate policies.
Well, there you have
Say
it.
That
Oh, review policies for culture.
we are all human,
There we go.
and I struggle with this just as much as I'm gonna bet everybody else does. But at times, as a board, I fear we come to this with our personal agenda rather than seeing every student. Whether we agree with one side or the other, when we sit behind that board table, we have to vote for every student in the district, not not my child enrolled in the district. And so I'll use myself. I asked to repeal the that unmasking of kids. I don't want my kid to wear a mask, but we pulled dollars away from mental health for children who needed it because we removed masking, and we were going to lose almost $300,000 for our students. Because when I sit behind that table, my vote had better be for every single school in the district, not for me. I think at times that is really hard for us to do in a small community, and we're loud, we know that. So that, I mean,
Well, you know,
that's why I'm marking that.
But Ristine, I'm gonna tell you something. The reason you're on the board is for that very reason, right? Some decisions are really hard to make. And when you make them, you have to stand by them, which is why I was mad we paid the fee. I wasn't even on the board. But nonetheless, take that set aside. The next one might be worse, right? And it may be something that is, Soren may be different. We may be different. And that's why I think when it comes to, you do have to represent every student, but you have to represent every student in the mindset that the education system that we are standing up behind, right? What I've seen tragically happen in society is we take the one student that's different and we conform all the other students to meet that student's criteria. And then we end up with chaos because we have an anomaly that is now the majority because they have a voice, and the majority is silenced. So I think you're okay to have voted for that, even though it cost money or it did what it did, because in the moment you also knew that your child was suffering because of the situation. But I think cultural responsiveness is difficult because I don't really understand what cultural responsiveness means. I know what bias means. I don't know what cultural responsiveness means because it's a very vague, ambiguous term. That's like saying if you're Native American or Hispanic or a white American or a Black American, whatever you are, cultural responsiveness, it doesn't really have this tangible meaning to me.
And we have had some pretty detailed discussions about policy, about those exact
Mhm.
that type of wording in
Mhm.
policies. We sat down that if a policy comes through that has language that has to do with.
You will
cultural stuff,
always,
we always sit and talk about that,
Mhm.
sometimes revise it. I can
Yeah.
think of a couple times
You
where we
will-
have revised the language from the OSBA policy.
you will
Unless we did
never
make it
see me
You
vote.
felt it wasn't inclusive enough.
You will never see me vote for a policy that segregates children by color, race, or anything else. I will not vote for a policy that says black and tan or whatever is this. I won't, because if we want all children to be equal, they shouldn't be identified any different than any other child. I will always vote for neutral terms like all children or less fortunate children or whatever it is, underprivileged children, but I will not do it by race, creed, or color because that's the exact definition of racism.
Well, and
So-
we look to OSBA for our policy reviews and things like that. So when.
Oh, I know,
I mean,
but
like,
it was like the
we're
equity
using that as
statement,
our-
right? The equity statement, I wanted to pull out like black and tan because I didn't think we needed it. It doesn't, we don't, the last thing you need is for a statement to say the thing for then those kids think they are the thing, right? Like it can just be for the underserved, underprivileged, whatever it is, community. But anyway, I don't really
I
understand
do
cultural
think
responsiveness.
We do a pretty good job of reviewing policies for that, because we do, but I don't know if there's a specific process then by which we do that, but we look at our policies, we tend to, as a group, we tend to focus on those things.
Yeah, I don't see bias in
Can I
them.
give
but-
you an example? I think
Sure,
this is a
sure.
relevant one.
Sure.
So there is an issue in a school very close to us where students had asked for Indigenous Peoples' Day off. Because it's a school with a majority of Native Americans.
Mhm.
That was not given. In fact, I do believe there was a walkout and the administrator
Yep.
was not happy. And now that administrator is on.
Well,
And so that would be to me, when you go back through and you're looking at things like, do your policies represent
Right.
cultural responsiveness? That school board is now looking at that because obviously their policies do not, and they're looking
Yeah.
at changing the schedule for next year to do that. And so I think like when we're talking about culture, that's the type of thing you're talking about. Like, do we have a group, like, for example, when we talk about Cinco de Mayo, do we have a large Hispanic population in which our policies would allow us to do things like, could we celebrate that? Do we recognize those students enough that we would say our policies allow us to recognize all the cultures, but not even just Cinco de Mayo? We have a large Asian American population. So things like that. I think to me, when we're talking about culture, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about.
yeah, maybe.
And
I guess
responsive to our
because it's tied to
community.
bias, I don't know. But hey, listen, you could celebrate every holiday, even if we don't have kids of that creed.
So I was
Let 'em all
probing
learn.
here because you rated yourself somewhat higher in this. But what I'm hearing from board members is you're not clear on what cultural responsiveness is or how to operationalize it.
Well, yeah, I guess it's just ambiguous to me.
And
a little
just,
bit.
going back that standard 6, this is one of those things that we need to be skilled with to be
Mhm.
effective as a board. So it just seems like this is actually an area where the board might seek some additional training so that you guys can come to some consensus or common understanding of when you use the term cultural responsiveness, you're all on the same page, because I don't get the sense that the team is on the same page on this
Probably
topic.
not. I
I
mean,
think there's a lack of understanding.
Yeah, I mean,
honestly.
listen, my best friend in Oregon is black, and knowing him for 10 years has taught me so much I never knew about being black. Right? We're all white people sitting at the table. I don't know what your background is, but we don't understand everything. So I'm totally fine with that. I want to understand better. I mean,
And I actually think that the fact that we have, as a group, selected every possible answer to that one suggests
Right.
that we're confused. by
right?
it.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So that could be some
So-
training to bring in. the
Yeah.
future.
Yep. Let's
Great.
pop over to page 5 really quick. Because I got to transition to start doing some goal setting.
Yay.
So question 9, the board establishes models a culture of high expectations for all students. There was some confusion here. And I think, what would it look like for the board to model a culture of high expectations for all students? What does that look like for you guys?
I think aligning our goals to the achievement expectations that we have for each student.
I think it's upholding our policies too, where we have it, where we put policies or student handbooks or staff, like think where we've voted and we've said that's our voice, because that's really within our purview and our lane. But if we see that being violated, if we violate that ourselves, then we are truly not modeling what we have expectations of others for.
What else?
Well, I think that you have to, if you're going to model, and then you have to show it somehow, right? Like you can establish, but if you are going to model it, then you either have to show the like celebration of students meeting those high expectations, or the celebration of the, procedures and policies in place that are meeting those high expectations. So I think establishing it is one thing. Modeling it is, since we can't model it ourselves, typically, maybe there's certain things we could, we have to find a way to really celebrate that culture and those, when those things happen, whether it's with the teachers or the students or the staff.
I think we are modeling it by we're showing our commitment to seeking additional professional development to better our decision making and goal setting for the district. We're modeling the standard and expectations of respect. Like this is how you can have a tough discussion with other people that think differently than us. It's all modeled in showing up, being present for the board meetings. As far as, we're all here marching the same path towards the same goal, all of us together. So I think we are modeling that in a lot of ways. But again, developing in my part because I'm still learning.
I think pinning off that too is we can't ever lower our expectations to get something we need done, right? Like if we're going to set these expectations and then all of a sudden there's a thing we're like, well, if we keep this at this, we're going to lose money, or if we keep this at this, we may not be able to do this. We have to not vote backwards, right? And like lower those expectations. And this is what I think we talked about with Kristen in the beginning. Like I wasn't a big fan of her having to set goals right away. I love that she did, is don't set goals so high that they're unattainable, because when you can't attain them, you just give up halfway there.
Or we set them lower next year.
Right. Like it's better to set benchmark goals that you can attain so you feel good when you attain them, and then you want to increase your goal, than to set goals that you never hit. And then you're just like, why did I set goals in the first
You
place?
follow that SMART goal process where
Right.
they're achievable.
Hold on, I'm just jumping around.
I mean, I used to love it because you guys know I'm self-employed. I only get commission, but every year we'd have a quota. But if I grew by $2 million one year, which was like one year I grew by 500%, the next year they still gave me a 28% quota on top of my $2 million of growth, which meant now I had to grow by, a ridiculous amount. And then if you don't hit it, you don't get the same amount of money. And it was always so sad for me because I'm like, wow, you could really blow it out, but they just punish you because your quota still isn't back where you were. It's now on this great number you had. I don't know. I've learned a lot about goal setting in life. It can be very frustrating.
So this was one of your this is in vision directed planning. It's one of your lower scores. Accountability and using data. We don't need to go through those. I think you know where your pain points are. You're pretty clear about that. So I want to transition to some goal setting. And do I want to write them up on the board? I can just write them down here. Okay. So what? I can flip back to, we don't care about that. We care about this. We'll just clean that up. So what? Had a really robust conversation. got this evaluation, you got this data. You know the highs and the lows here. I will put that back up. So you can know where your strengths are, although cultural responsiveness we find actually may not be an area of strength, that may be an area where we need to work. What do you want to do?
You know, for me personally, as a board member, I would like to understand the culture of our school better. I don't know how you set a goal to accomplish that, but I do have students here, but I don't really know the whole student body and the culture of the school as well as I would like to. And I think for the school board, it could be great to really understand some of the high points that, you know, Krista or the staff points out as things that are unique or special or important to our school that maybe we're not aware of. I don't even know how many like Hispanic children we have, or you know what I mean, or children of color. I don't know those numbers. But I think, or indigenous people, I don't know. But I do know that some of those things can make you really proud of what you are. And some of those things can help you grow into something you need to become. So.
One thing
So how,
I've been noticing actually over and over is like the vision directed planning part. Like at the conference, we were talking about having your strategic goals and your vision as a board, you know, we discuss around these issues, but we've never really sat down and mapped out exactly what our current vision and goals are. And it keeps coming up as an important thing. And I keep thinking, yeah, we'll get there. And then we haven't ever sat down and specifically talked about that. I mean, it comes up now and then.
Well, I feel strongly that we're just now receiving data. And Krista and Laura are working really hard to find us some historical data that wasn't always available. It's really hard to, in my opinion, make an achievable goal without having some solid information to
So-
base it off of, especially when it comes to achievement, attendance.
I'm thinking more about big picture stuff though, like
Yeah.
Overall.
vision of like what the school is,
Yeah.
what are we
Right.
working
Right.
with this data analysis?
Yeah, we've talked about it a few times, like branding the school, so to speak.
Talked about it, but we don't ever sit down and really just hash out and come to a definitive, this is our vision for the school.
yeah, you're both right. So, you know, you have these large goal areas. They're like mini vision statements, like for academic achievement. All kids will achieve, will read at grade level, third grade and third grade, that sort of thing. But then you're talking about SMART goals, really tangible goals that you can track. You have intermediate goals along the way. So those are going to be embedded as well. So it's a yes and situation. So, but what I'm hearing is that you guys want to do some district goal work.
I do.
I think if we work on that vision, I think if we make the vision directed planning a priority, you're then using your data and increasing accountability. Because it kind of ties everything in together. If we make that like if we made that our number one, we're not gonna kick the can, we're gonna jump over it this year. I bet we bring up the things that are tied to it.
I would agree. And I think the board is ready. This team is ready to do that work. I mean, you guys know where your roles are. It's time that, you know, by the end of the school year, you will have your feet on the ground fully. Next year, it's probably a good time to get going. It does not
So-
have to be a full-scale strategic planning process that's gonna take 18 months. It does not have to be that.
Why don't we make it a goal for this year to really narrow down our final vision? And then as we have our feet on the ground, we can set the SMART goals to achieve said vision, you know, break it down into the work part of it.
Yeah, all those things would be embedded in that process. So I think the first thing that you guys need to do is think about what do you want your process to look like, and when you and start planning that and then execute on that plan. That's going to be visioning, but it's also going to be doing, you know, district priorities and then building out what are those operational goals? What are those tracking metrics?
I feel like we did a lot of the visioning though that day that we had our work session where we did the Post-its and the boards. I mean, I thought,
That was those were operating agreements for the board. That was district priorities.
So.
You're talking about with me? Or
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah,
do
no,
something.
no,
But I
So
think
what
it
I
was
think, so
still
it's funny that
very-
you brought it up, because we've actually been thinking about it. And I think then we could use OSA, or what, OSAA, sorry, OSBA, to bring in and have that conversation, because I don't disagree with you. I think we have a mission statement. Is that mission statement still relevant to what we're doing? And if not, how do we do that? And then how do we get our vision? And then it'd be district goals, like all students, are able, and then what are the little bullet points below? Like, what are things that we're gonna accomplish to make sure that all students succeed? That we feel that all employees, that staff and community have a voice. Okay, what are those things? And so I have been waiting for us to get to this point. I'm glad you guys brought it up, because I've actually talked to Vince a few times about it, like, hey, we need to start doing it. He's like, oh, we have to get to a point before we bring it on. And so I think we are.
You're there.
Well, and I think one of the things you brought up, Jimmy, was that word ensures, and then listening, Krista, to the way you just talked about that, like having those goals, that's where like next year we come in and we go, yeah, we can ensure it because we know we did this, this, and this, and we
Exactly.
nailed that, and so we ensure, all of these pieces, so.
So start planning that.
Okay.
There's a couple things that are embedded into that. I think some data and assessment literacy is going to be important. So I'm just going to put that up because that's going to feed into this work. So cultural responsiveness is going to fit into this work. If you go and build district goals without being clear about being culturally responsive, it will not bake in. Okay. So can I put up assessment literacy, data and assessment literacy? And I have plans for this stuff. So I have ways to do that.
Stickers across.
No thanks.
Kind of, that's one way, but more importantly, you learn it from your superintendent, right? And then something around cultural responsiveness. We do have a program. It's a 3-part program for doing that work. Bethel School District. This work. So we have something that we can help you fill in the water. It's a deep pool. There's a lot of work there to do, but okay, what else?
Yeah, same, but I just stood up to relieve the pressure.
Yeah, do it.
I have to go.
I drove from Vancouver to here, so with a stop
I
and
was
say.
just saying I had to go when I got here.
Yeah, no, that's what I have. Oh. You said it. It was teaching the community what the board does. Jamie, I think you guys
That's
should do
pretty
that.
good. That is-
I actually like that.
So
We
that has
really-
been, I don't know how many times I've.
I
moved
think
this
we need
task.
to incorporate it in your idea of having ODE come. That plan.
I'm actually gonna see them tomorrow at a conference. So I'm gonna talk to them. Because I do think, I like that idea because I do think the lines have been so skewed that we're still seeing it. And, it's hard for you guys to go to the superintendent all the time, because then they're like, why do we go to the superintendent? Well, now we're teaching them why. So actually,
Well, and they're also learning. They're also having to build trust in a new board, in a new super, in new processes and new procedures. They saw a lot of new things come at them with the school year, right? The parent teacher handbook, different things that have come out and great things. But if they don't understand how this is all rolling. I just. You know, Russ's statement where, had he known, I was on the fence till the very last minute about running because I wasn't confident in that role. Like, am I going to be more effective as a vocal parent, or am I going to be more effective as a board member? And walking that line is like walking a tightrope. And I struggled with that decision myself. But again, I rest in the fact that my voice will be my vote. And I get the unique opportunity to have 4 colleagues, 5, counting Krista, to get perspective and education that community members aren't getting. And the trainings and the information that if people could just get some of that, I think they would maybe be more confident in the process.
I mean, are we missing anything up here?
Probably, but it seems
I
like
actually,
lot.
that's a pretty good,
This
that's
is
a,
a
that's,
lot.
that's a chew, that's a good
This is
fight.
huge. It's a
I'll
big
take
one.
a picture of it.
It's more
Okay,
than we've
so
ever done before.
Jamie,
Makes
I'll
me
actually
excited.
forward you, I
Yeah.
emailed myself what it was.
Yeah,
I have an expanded list. I've got more detail in this, but I mean, these are the big planks. The one that I didn't have was, community engagement. On the role of the board. That's a slide deck that I've been needing to make for a couple of years.
Well, and I think you could, I mean, we could have an open house where we talk about it, and maybe we do a dinner where people can come in. And then it's something we send out to our community via email, like, hey, if you have, here's what the slide deck, if you have questions, please come and ask us, or ask a board member, like, what is this actually?
Have things come with that, those slides about like, is this board business or is this not board business?
Mm.
I
So
kind
Yeah.
I also would love to tap into your experience and Sammy's experience and those people that are wearing OSBA and board hats on actual successful practices for engaging the community and
Yeah.
educating the community.
Corvallis can share about that. We definitely did some work on that.
And you shared in one of your seminars that I attended where you put yourself in some very uncomfortable situations, put yourself outside of the box to go into different areas of your community that you wouldn't necessarily have placed yourself in a natural setting. And I thought that took a lot of courage to stand up and say in front of a whole group of your colleagues. But it's important. Like, we need to make sure that we're not just staying in our own little comfort zone, and we're truly going out and getting the input from all of our constituents, just like we want all and each child to succeed. We want each community member to be involved and have a voice.
Yeah.
And be bought in to our goal.
Well, and I think one of the things that we've gotten
Getting
criticized
chills.
for
That's-
is that we haven't been
that's
able
awesome.
to like
Woo.
talk to the community. And so like, I think it'd be kind of cool for them to get to do that Q&A session that we kind of got to do that with other board members. And although we can't hear a complaint, we can't hear things like that. But they could totally ask a question, and you would need to be there also, because you probably would have more answers than you, Krista.
Oh,
Maybe Vince too.
But what I'm thinking of, this light bulb went off for me in this last session, when ODE said, you do realize that we implement what your legislation votes on.
That they sometimes have
And it
their
was
hands
like-
tied like we do.
There's so many times, like to Russ's point tonight about like, oh, I have power. No, you don't. We always, and then I've always kind of attributed that to Oregon Department of Education tells me what I have to do. And oh wait, hold on a second. There's a whole other piece of this over here.
Yeah.
And I think if the community could, if we could all talk together
Mhm.
and they could hear that board's voice, that, this is what we do. This is what we do with those things. This is how we advocate. This is how we have conversations with legislature. This is how you impact change and have a voice as a community. I think that is the empowering piece for your community member.
Well, and I think community members, honestly, the more I learn through this process, they have more power than we do because they can lobby, they can talk to their representatives, they can do this research themselves and make more informed decisions on voting day, right? So they have more power than we do as a board member that they've elected.
Say more flexibility. Maybe no.
You
We
vote
can
for
have a
option
whole
two.
nerdy
I
conversation
can't.
But I
about
just think
political
it-
power.
I just think it's super, it was very enlightening, and I
Mhm.
think education brings that engagement also of, I've been pointing a finger somewhere that I really didn't know that's not where the finger should get pointed, but okay, and then we become partners.
Mhm.
We aren't working against each other, we become partners
They
because of
want all
that.
your kids to succeed too. They're really passionate.
But,
about it.
yeah, I mean, I think in general, like, that's the goal, so I just,
I don't know what slides I have left. I have some prompt slides that, what did you observe in the report?
I
Little
think we
late for
covered
that.
that.
What themes did you notice? What's working? What needs improvement? What questions do you have for your colleague? Hey, you guys, well, you actually guys talked and challenged each other. Do you have any questions for each other? Deb, you're really quiet.
She's sleeping.
I was like, she's probably asleep. No, I'm just kidding. She trusts us.
No, I am sitting here in pain though, so I was thinking about kind of bailing out, but we're
We're-
almost
well-
done.
We're almost done.
Yeah, sorry, I pulled my hip out and I've been down since Saturday.
Oh.
Yeah.
I can put it in for you if you need it in.
Oh, I've been to the ER, I've been to
I'm
the
sure,
chiro,
I'm
been to
sure.
the doctor, and now to physical therapy. I've had enough of doctors.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So
Just
what
your
issues
neighbor.
need to be addressed? I think we've got that. We've got a plan for action to address the big nagging issues that you have. What strengths can you leverage? I think your rapid growth as a board is probably your biggest strength. You've got a lot of momentum at this point. Leverage that. Let's see. What specific work does the board need to do? We did that. You've seen the slide. That what you do matters. Okay. I will get the detailed list over to y'all. And then we can start building a plan on what to do. But I mean, I'm really looking at you. The first thing that you can start doing is start having conversations about student data, whatever you have laying around, packing it up and getting it in front of them.
She's been doing a
Mhm.
great
Yeah,
job
she
at
has.
coming to our
Every, so like,
meetings.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
with
tell you at the
data.
next board meeting, I'm asking Bart to give you a list of the Ds and Fs for 7 through 12, the percentages, not the student, but the percentages, and then
Yeah.
what things are we putting in place to help with that, what structures, and like
Yeah.
Heather is gonna show the iReady for the Learn at Home and talk about because, and that's the piece is like, I really wanna get you guys data, because then I think as we start moving towards the district goals, then we can start saying, hey, our data really is more about, we have to get kids in the seats before we really can look at achievement. You know, things like that,
So we
not,
put our focus on
so what are we gonna put,
attendance.
because then I think that focus then helps us to say, ooh, where do we really wanna put our money? Is our money about really right now about getting all these, you know, cool gadgets to teach, or is it about what can we do to start increasing community engagement for attendance? So, like, that's why we're throwing out data, because I've
Attendance.
actually kind of been waiting, and I think I've told you that. I've been kind of waiting for the district, like you guys get the point, but like, we need a district goal, and how do we do that? And I've actually been telling him, he's like, wait, it'll come to that.
It's cool, guys. That's all I've got. Then we got the goals.
So,
for-
OSBA Fall Convention is our next agenda item. And we want to just, I guess, to the group, do you just want to roundtable some of your hot topics, or what do you want to do from there? I'm gonna say roundtable some hot topics and things, and then we can maybe we can put those as future agenda items to talk about and more in depthly in a board meeting for next steps and like prioritization for Krista. Would you like to go first, Jamie? Can I put you on the
Yeah, because
spot?
I
sure
do want to
can.
know what you learned about the student involvement piece.
Actually, I was severely disappointed and actually walked out of one of those
Oh, that's
sessions and
right.
went to the bargaining agreement one instead. However, we're a very tiny school, and I really respect the perspective that Krista has given me in regards to when I get excited about something, I get really excited. And I really think potentially our ticket to getting more student and parent and community involvement is going to be getting our kids excited to get involved. And how that works, what that looks like, I really need to think we need to rely on Krista's experience on how to do that. I just don't want to see it pushed off for 3-5 years. Because I really do think if we get our kids excited, we're going to get our families excited. You're going to get more butts in the seats, and kids, I think a lot of times I've learned this in my own parenting, is if I take the time to hear their perspective on a situation, things can go a lot smoother and a lot more successful. Not that I'm saying that they get to rule the roost, but if I understand their perspective, I might soften my approach a little bit. So if we could really hear what's important to the kids at school, what they want to see, and I know that the staff and stuff are doing that, but I think we need to see and hear some of that here too. And I think they need to see that it's not just the teachers and the superintendent that are valuing that we as community members that were elected in these positions by everybody out there, we care enough to ask and let them be involved. So that's a big one for me. And then another one that I'm still trying to get more information about is parental rights and parental voice in education. That's a hot topic in the world right now. I attended one of the sessions. I'm still trying to get the slides because they're still not uploaded because there were some policy. I just looked
That
again.
particular presenter may not have turned in their slide.
Yeah, I just emailed again.
Linnell, are you emailing Linnell?
I emailed Cowan Sterling.
Oh, don't, that's the lawyer.
That's an attorney.
That was one of the presenters, one of the main presenters.
Oh, okay, well then.
This was a lawyer,
Yeah,
legal, it was Callan, Tanya Brady, and Joseph Lindsay.
Oh, wow, that's all three, yeah.
And I just wanted the slides really because they did a really good job of pointing some things out and specific policies that I want to take back and read myself with a parent lens and a board member lens in maybe 2 different readings to see if it warrants some conversation. Because I have some passion behind some of that.
Yeah.
Oh, like you birthed a child, not the school. Ah, that's my passion. Sorry.
I did not.
When did you email Cal?
I just emailed her again
Oh,
tonight, but
Okay.
I don't know
So,
before.
Hear from her in like by Thursday? Just shoot
I
me
think
an
I had messaged you, but then I realized that that probably wasn't the right way. So,
I don't have any of that content, but I
Yeah.
can help her out.
well, and I would just happen to pull it up again today just to see if it was there, and it's not on the Saturday presentations. But it's called Parental Rights to Student Records and Educational Materials, and it was really interesting. Some of the language coming down even from OSBA is surprising. And I think that there's a lot being violated. Anyways, I got a lot of reading to do, but that I think I know in this community, parental voice is loud and it is, I think, and again, an only other way to succeed in a small community is making sure that we respect that. So I want to make sure that our policies are legal, but supportive of that framework.
My wife's aunt is a superintendent and I listened to her, who, not any offense to you, but she had no children either, tell me that the school had more control over the kids than the parents. And I told her she'd go fly a kite. Like, she doesn't invite us over for meals anymore, but anyway.
It's a sticky
It
one.
is a sticky thing. You bring your kids to school to learn, not to get indoctrinated. So that's my feeling. But anyway, I learned a little bit about not taking any questions, as I already knew from reporters, but
We
So-
can take questions during, like. we
oh,
can take
answering questions, just defer to the chair. That's
Well,
what I
we-
said.
I
the
would
chair.
say we defer to the superintendent to follow up on questions.
Oh, no, I'm gonna say defer to Christine.
No. Well, you can defer to me and then I will say your best defense, wait, it's always policy. I mean, that's actually your offense and your defense.
So Vince, is Board of Directors insurance available to school board members now that we can be personally liable? Because like with my nonprofit, I have Board of Directors
You do have
insurance.
liability insurance.
Okay.
Because you're a member district, so you're covered by PACE.
For certain
Individual
things.
professional liability?
Hmm?
Individual professional liability?
Oh, man, I don't know. I'm not an insurance person. You could ask
You
Dave
can get
Hardy.
a
No, because I
policy.
know, because they actually have Board of
Then you
Directors
are-
policies for boards that they sell outside of, I don't know how much the school's gonna protect you, but.
My advice that was given to me
Maybe.
by former board members, and even before some of these very, very stringent laws that say we wouldn't be covered by those policies, is to get a professional, an independent professional liability policy.
Yeah.
Because that will cover you outside of anything that the school won't take responsibility for.
Right, you're only covered if you're operating in your official capacity and in good faith.
But in,
So
you know, Soren's example, where we could be personally fined, what is it, 10,000?
I don't remember that. There were some different steps that the.
Oh, I listened to
If
that
we
too,
happen
yeah.
to not stay on
Yeah,
topic during
Yeah,
executive
yeah,
Yeah,
session.
it's
Jump
like
into that
they were
one?
very specifically about staying on topic, specifically during executive sessions. And there's a new process where people can file a complaint with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. And then they can investigate that. Like, I don't know how someone would find out that you strayed off topic in an executive session.
However,
But-
people are sneaky and leave cell phones.
Yeah, they actually said that in one of the.
Mhm.
If they did, and they filed a complaint and they investigated, found that you did, yes.
Yeah.
And then they said that if you find that during an executive session, people are talking about something else that's not specifically what that, like when Christine says under ORS,
Yeah.
blah, blah, and then if it's not exactly that, then you make sure to be, hey, I object to this and we need to get back on topic, make sure that
Mhm.
Laura notes in her minutes that you said this, and if people still won't stay on topic, you just get up and walk out.
Mhm.
Make sure
Well,
she
you have
knows
it
that you.
recognized too. Have it recognized that you left the executive session.
Because the ethics violations are not covered by the district.
Well, and is
Correct.
it right that media is allowed to stay in for executive
They are,
session?
and
And
they
they
should.
would be likely be the ones to file said
Or another
complaint.
board member. Don't ever underestimate your board.
They can, well, that's, I mean, violating.
We have a pretty cohesive board. by the
If
way.
you
Stay
violate
on topic.
executive
Yeah.
session as a board member, you can absolutely report that.
Right.
And the thing about the media, they can't report on anything that's under that executive session code, but as soon as you break that code,
Then
they
they can go.
can absolutely report on anything else in there.
But
Yeah,
then on the upside of that, they also said that now we're all required to take public meeting law training.
Mhm. That is actually one of the new,
Yeah, that's a new.
that's a new law and it's in one of the second, one of the policies. So we'll look at OSBA for that training.
yeah,
Well,
we'll probably have
they
that. They-
gave
OGEC
us-
is
did
gonna
this solely change because they allowed school board members to like get paid money now, or has this
No.
always been?
There's other,
I mean, the
Um,
personal liability part.
no, that's all, the ethics has always been that, yeah.
Was that covered in the first day one bronze level training of a new board member?
Our training isn't necessarily compliant, it has been
Oh,
evaluated by
okay.
OGEC. OGEC hasn't even come up with the requirements for that training,
Okay,
so we don't
Okay.
even know what to train you on.
Yeah, they actually said like, there's
They're
this
not
law in place and we don't really have any guidelines yet, so. we're
Right,
not
I
gonna
remember
provide
that
any
now.
training,
Yeah, I
But
remember
you're
that too.
you're responsible for, not violating that law. But
Yeah,
we're-
it goes into effect January
Okay.
1, but you have, and you also have your whole term to become compliant.
okay.
Well, and I do believe
That
we have a
makes
board
sense.
4
secretary
years.
that also has a voice to keep us on track
There's
too.
2 years.
In
somewhere.
fact, so like if
It's a long
we,
time.
if inadvertently something started to kind of stray, your board secretary would speak up and say, that is not under this ORS, like.
Your lawyer could also say
Yeah.
that. So
if
like
they-
when
if
we
had-
do,
Yeah,
when we
well-
do executive sessions, the lawyer always says, and this is what you put.
So the really good practice in that situation is to turn the meeting over and use your attorney as the hearings officer.
which I think is what we've done
We've done.
previously, and then we've also said, can you outline what is or isn't under this ORS?
as
We can or
well.
cannot talk.
Yeah. But just, yeah, stay on topic. It's not that hard. You'll be all right. Going back to student representatives, I, as a former member of a board that has had student representatives ever since I was on the board, but built a new policy with our students. I strongly recommend that process. I don't know what your workload is this year, but I mean, it's only December.
I know Kendra and another girl wanted to do that. I just heard it from Mia because they're good friends.
There's
But
also their, Corvallis just finished their policy last year. That was based on Tiger Walton's policy,
Mhm.
which they really got this rolling. Beaverton is building a policy and they have like a committee of like 23 kids. So you can call up Beaverton, or I have contacts up there to connect you guys to get input on what they're doing. And then you can get your own kids together and grab those drafts, put them all together and see what sticks. And you can
Yeah.
have students on your board next year.
then we'll have students that grow up to be adults that'll run for the school board because they'll know what it's all about. They'll be educated when they
Yeah.
put their name in.
But it definitely changes the way the board operates. If you treat it right and include them in your deliberations, it's pretty powerful.
So I'd like to make a recommendation. The two student-focused classes that I took at this seminar,
Yeah,
there was more of a focus about what their program was, less on how a board can actually stand up a program.
oh, okay.
It was really good to see and hear, and it was encouraging to see these young people standing up and saying, this is what we've done, this is what we do for this particular program, but not how did this start? Where did this come in ground level, right? How did you get to that policy? How did you work with your students to get to that policy? What events took place? What did your administration
Oh,
do to
yeah.
support it? Like rock bottom, we're planting the seed in the dirt.
Mm,
I want to know how we make it grow
mhm.
I would-
versus seeing
I would-
these wonderful things that are already established.
you should reach out to your neighbors over in Corvallis. They just did it.
Well, Sammy reached out.
I'm writing.
Yeah,
Mm.
I have talked to Ryan Knox.
yeah, Ryan, I mean, we went 3 times, 3 times for the kids, 4 times.
I would love to see how the two gentlemen that were the facilitators, I'll have to,
Was it from Centennial High School?
I don't remember. This was,
That's where
I
my
think
kids
it was
go.
an outside, was that Friday? Or was that- It was Friday.
was Friday.
CNT did one
Youth
of them.
Advisory Engagement and State Policy Making. Wes Rivers and Anderson Du Bois. I would love to see how they created. I want to know how that program was built
Mhm.
because
I mean, there's no magic there. You just get in a room with your kids, and put your heads together and say, what do we want this to look like?
So build a work session around it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but then
Elect some
who do you invite
officers.
and how do you then, you know what I mean? We don't have
but
we don't
it's
have
different.
we don't have student government, so it's not like we could bring in.
Yeah,
our
but we
student
can
government.
ask the kids who are interested in student government.
Well,
and
we
the
don't
teacher to
have, I
lead
think
it.
that's where, sorry, I'm interrupting, but I think that's where like we prioritize where we want this to fall
Right.
in operations to start engaging them so that we
Mm-hmm.
can build that work session
Mhm.
as they've had the time to plant the seeds and grow. And so I think that's partly what you're talking about too, is that planting the seed. Did operations start that process? Did the board come into the school and do an assembly? What does that look like to start? I mean, like
Yeah,
maybe
We're going
like,
ground
like,
level.
maybe like readying the soil before we even planted the
yeah,
seed.
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So,
How
yeah,
about
because
making
we
the
don't have,
fertilizer?
correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have a true leadership class anymore. And we don't have student government. Those were in my mind, those would be the two pools of students
Mhm.
that I would initially think we would approach. So that being non-existent and this being a brand new
Yes,
avenue.
but you can have a
where
student
do we
government
start?
like
I don't know. I
extracurricular.
would talk to your
Like you don't
kids.
have to have it as
Get
a
a handful,
class.
just grab some kids,
It
throw
can
them
be a
in the
club.
room, get in a room with them and ask
That
them.
could be really scary.
No, I'll tell you, it's awesome.
It could be like
Your
it can
kids
just
are
be like
brilliant.
we can just have
They'll
if Krista
figure it
did
out.
it, we could just have like a club after school that's student government. It doesn't have to be class time. So Like, and it doesn't have to be led by a teacher. It can be led by a student or, well, an administrator, but I mean, I don't know what your payroll looks like.
Board
but
member.
Board member, perhaps, since Jamie's really
Good.
passionate about it.
I can't be here during
I'm telling
school
you,
hours
I
yet.
would, yeah, take, look at the options out
You
there,
have that as a.
determining.
Well, let me, can I mull over it?
Yeah.
Cause here's the deal, I do think we have some, my fear is that if they don't see the value in it, they're gonna be like, well, what do you want? So yeah, we're gonna do this. Oh, I want you to come to the board meeting. You know, at 7 o'clock. You know, some boards, I will tell you, some boards have done, and I found this out at our OSBA
Mhm.
conference, where they'll do 2 meetings at 7. And then they'll do one at 4:30 so they can get the kids to come. And then they do 2 meetings at 7 and one at 4:30 because they want to have that, but they recognize, because their meetings, I believe, are 6:30. They recognize that they're not going to get kids at 6:30.
Well, yeah, I think it's always good having a high schooler. I think it's good for kids to understand student government stuff, school board stuff, and have leadership opportunities. And I think there's people in the town. I mean, I used to run a nonprofit in Idaho that I did with schools all the time. That was like leadership and stuff. So, I mean, there's people willing to do it. I can't put anything else on my plate right now, or I would probably get divorced, but like, not lying. But there are people, I'm sure, that would be passionate about it, just like Jamie, to get involved and spearhead it, and could probably have something pretty cool.
Yeah,
I would do it next year. I just can't do it this year.
Don't get mired
I can't
down in
do
the
it now.
details. And if, so what if you're not ready on September when
Right,
school opens?
right.
Do it halfway through next year.
I mean, I would totally
Whenever
work with
get
you,
there,
Chris, to
get
have
there.
set something up for next year with that I could be, I mean, I could be involved next year. I just can't
Yeah.
do anything else this year
You got
without,
those captive.
not with
groups of
another baby on the way.
Kids in the classroom waiting for their
The
practice
captive, I love
time.
that.
They're waiting for practice time. They're maybe doing homework or whatever. You just pop in and be like, hey, do you or anybody you know want to be involved in this?
But I think we have to set up a structure of what it
Yeah.
looks like and
Yeah,
what,
for
you know,
sure.
because to me, I've seen where we have student representatives and they're like, last week, we had homecoming. Like, we
Right.
want them to understand, you want more of, hey, this is kind of what,
You made this decision last month and now let me criticize. you
yeah,
for
or
it in
like,
the
hey, we
hallways.
really, like,
Yeah.
when we talk about
Honestly.
policy, like, have we
Right.
thought how it affects, you know, blah, 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 blah. And so I think
Mhm.
that also takes some training to the kids, like, hey, do you
Mhm.
guys really want to come in and tell you what we really feel, or do you just want to read what we did? But if, you know, you also can't have kids in here being like, I really hate science class, that, you know, because that also can start becoming an issue in the classes. They, you know, talking about, how do you talk about that cultural shift, that we want to see more classes that,
I don't think anybody has that experience. I don't think anybody does. I've never heard of
but
it.
I do think you have to train them on what we're
Yeah.
looking for
It's like
versus
they're
them.
working on whatever the
Yeah.
board's
Well,
working on.
Well, and I'm
And I
not
think
sure
part-
we're
It's
there
that
yet.
No, I
I
don't-
want to I want to respect your process and the foundation that you're laying. But again, I don't want this to be something that's pushed
No, I
2, 3,
Infinitum,
4,
yeah.
5 years down the road.
have talked to Ryan, because then maybe I'll say, hey, Ryan, can you tell me how we got the, like, you got the soils? You know, was it that he just walked into a classroom and went, hey, who wants to come to a board meeting and talk about policy?
Well,
I
they
mean-
have a super cool process on how they do theirs. I watch their board meetings because, you know, I'm a nerd, but they have a really cool process on how their student government in each of the schools actually nominates their students to be a part of. It's really
And it's
cool.
different.
It
The
is.
schools, the different schools have different processes.
That's cool. Oh,
They determine that. I mean, we didn't top down that.
So
I
the-
would go look at their policy.
Yep.
It's a really good policy. The kids wrote a really good policy.
Oh. So the two that I went to that were a really big note, I think impact us the most, negotiations. We know we're going into negotiations this year. Best practice that I heard across the, I mean, like unanimous, is that if you have your 2 board members in the negotiation process, their job is to keep their mouth shut. They are listening to what's happening, and when there is a break to, you know, have a conversation, that they're providing guidance to the superintendent and business manager of what, remember what the board goals are. How does this negotiation support our district goals? How does this support, you know, our budget, that 2-year plan? What does that look like? And then you go back in and your board members are silent again. Because
This is negotiations for what?
union contracts.
Oh,
And
okay.
I
So-
sat in on that one with the lawyers. It was
Mhm.
lawyers
Mhm.
talking to lawyers, and I was just kind of a fly on the wall.
Mhm.
And they spoke mostly about the minutiae of like what's going on and contract negotiations. I'm like, that's not super. It's interesting, but not super relevant. But the one thing they did say, because they didn't know I was there, there's like your board members are the weakest link. Like, well,
That's why they want you to be quiet.
So, but it was good because that's not how things have gone in the past. I thought it was really good for us to kind of hear that and really kind of change our mind to best practice, supporting our superintendent, and providing guidance. I feel like both Krista and Dawn looked to us for like, are we on the right track? Are we veering off? And so I thought it was a really good one. The other one I sat in on was budget. And it was so funny to hear how it was kind of aligned that like where our protection and default is policy, your financial officer is their audit. So that's why it's so important that they go through that audit piece and they have that clear information and that they, well, one can turn it in on December 31st because otherwise they can't do anything as of January 1st unless they file an extension. And so there's just some pieces behind that, but really, their job is to continue to keep us updated on where we're at in that cycle of the year, where we're starting to hit, like where we can ask that question of, are we at risk, under budget, over budget? But they're giving us the financial health of the district, not the operational decisions of the finance department. And that was one of the things that was my takeaway was when Don comes to talk to me, he's talking about the health of the district financially and where we may start to see risks and what we might need to reappropriate funds and things like that. So it was probably, it's my weakest link is the budget area and the finance area. So it was one of the ones that I was gleaned a lot of knowledge out of there to make sure that I understood what my role was in that piece of it.
I think the kindergarten interview, I think it was called kindergarten interview, but they changed the name. And I don't have my computer in front of me to remember the notes, but maybe I put it in my phone. I went to that session and it made tons of sense because these kindergartners are coming into school. Their parents, a lot of times, some are in preschool, some aren't, but this first entrance into school that they meet with the kindergarten teacher and the kindergarten teacher is able to have they changed it to kindergarten conversations. That's what it was, because it was kindergarten interviews, but they changed it to conversations. So it opened this up to the parents more to have a conversation with the teacher and not feel so questioned. Now, the part I took away that was negative is I feel like they were doing it under the guise to report to the state the information they were getting from the parents about the kids, whether they were, under income or needed food stamp, what other things. But the thing I think that was so relevant is it helped the teacher share their life with the parents and the parents, the students' life with them, and to build this relationship. So when their kids started school the next week, now this all took place the week before school. And this is the hard part, right? Is that time with the teacher to get that pay or whatever works. But as a parent who will have a kindergartner going into kindergarten in 4 years and 5 years, because another one behind that, I think it is pretty cool to have this idea that you'd meet for 20-30 minutes with the teacher and the parents and the student and have that conversation. Then your student's not so scared going on the first day. And the teacher also may be aware. And then there's also, if there is, they said, concerns that are merited at that point, they can have a plan in place, right? Like if there's some issue that they're going to face. But it was actually a rather entertaining one. They had all these little videos, but they did strategically try to manipulate it because it was a pilot program, just in like 2 schools. And they said the biggest takeaway is the name. So they changed to kindergarten conversations. So look for more info on that, but I loved it.
I like back to school nights for some of that too.
Mhm.
Like I just reached out to our previous kindergarten teacher when I had that situation and said, can I drop off stuff? And then we did that and got to show in the classroom, but wouldn't that be awesome if, just like that kind of,
Yeah.
not just for kindergarten then too, like, then you don't have a kid lugging in a box full of stuff on day one too.
No, I'm glad I'm actually writing notes.
I know you are. I hear you typing.
Yeah, no, it's good.
We did that this year. We went in before school started. It took a
Some people did. So like, for example, there is a school district in the Southern Coast that actually spends the first week, they don't have the kindergartners come the first
Mhm.
week. They set up times for their parents to come in. It's like an hour long. Then they do the assessments, because remember we still have kindergarten assessment.
Mhm.
But then they meet with the parent, the kid can work with the teacher. So I think it's important. I know one of the things that was missing last year, and I don't know, in the hubbub of stuff, is sometimes and I did this at my previous school, we did a kindergarten roundup where the kids got to come that spring and look at the classroom, and the parents got to meet the teachers, and we had like a bus there where people could come up, and so that's something we're looking at as well. But I like that idea of the first week of them coming in and speaking to the teacher, because I'm constantly, Mr. P and I and Mr. B are constantly saying, like, a lot of these kids, the only adults they've really been with is their family.
Mhm.
So the kindergarten teacher and the principal are the first, or in the aides are really the first adults they've met who aren't with their family,
Mhm.
who aren't their family most often. And sometimes it's really hard for parents to say, I'm gonna give you my kid, because really they're the only people who watch their kids for more than, our
We just try
family.
to put our baby in the nursery at church and they give him back 15 minutes later. It's horrible. So I can't
So-
imagine when
so
you show
kind
up
of
for
that
kindergarten.
piece, like, how do you have that it's a kindergarten transition. So those
Right,
are the
right.
times when you start looking also at like districts who do like a kindergarten transitions program.
Well, and we
And
can't,
different pieces
yeah, I
like
was gonna
that.
say, I feel like that was part of our grant stuff too.
Well,
I
yeah,
think-
I forgot on the first one, but it was a really good session and I
Well,
thought
we're-
there was a lot to take away there. So
On this topic, I think we also could do a better job of a high school orientation.
Mhm.
yeah.
Because I know my kid is one that did not understand credits. And if you fail, it's not like you just get to do it again. I mean, you do if you want to be a
Well.
fifth year senior.
That's
I
right.
mean,
Lots of conversations
That's
right
what-
now. about
I
that.
I
school.
think that
Mm.
it's doing a disservice to families and students not having something in place to explain the importance of that earlier than
Well, and
first
I,
quarter of freshman year.
and I don't actually disagree with you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we are gonna talk about later is the state came down with a law that says you have to now have personal finance in a careers class for graduation. So
That's back in the picture, because that
Yes,
was a
and it
requirement
starts-
when I was in
it
school.
starts with the freshmen. So now, Bart and I.
Yeah, but everyone went bankrupt between you and now. So that's why
Wyatt and I
they're
are
putting it
talking
back
about,
in.
could we maybe do something like that where we do like a high school preparedness class as a requirement as an 8th grade and a college and career as a 7th grade? So like those things can be built in. I don't disagree with you. When I did 8th grade promotion, we always had a conversation prior to it about, and here are the requirements to graduate. And
On a parent night,
Yeah.
explaining how
And
that's
that's-
gonna work.
And that's what we
And-
had, because right now I currently have seniors going, I just don't wanna be here. And I'm like, well, maybe you should thought that when you failed freshman English.
Uh-huh.
Well, I don't want to take a class with full of freshmen. Then you should have passed it in freshman English. So I do think, I don't disagree with you on that. I think junior high does a huge disservice because they just get to go up. Now in Florida, they don't. I found that out. If you don't pass a certain amount of classes, you get to take 7th grade again. But in order,
Well, I think,
I don't disagree with you.
let's try not to get too political, but I think that kind of went by the wayside with No Child Left Behind. Because it was really discouraged to hold children back who weren't
Right.
succeeding at grade level.
Right.
And so, I think we're getting the repercussions of some of that.
So yeah, no, thank you for putting that down. I'm putting that down because I actually do think that's part of that guidance counseling part
You do.
program and academic advising.
I don't have connection.
So, nope, I have that on. Okay. I'm just writing.
That's why I wanted my
So
son.
another big thing that I was excited about was this rural schools caucus. And when Ristine and I happened to walk in the Oregon Small School
Schools
Board meeting.
Association.
They were
Yes.
trying to get me to go.
I
and I
was
walk
like,
in, I'm like, no, I don't want
oh.
to go into.
They
This-
posted it as an event and we were like, well,
Let's check this
let's
out.
check it out. And
We were looking for patron chairs at the back because, we weren't board members,
no,
right?
no, no, superintendents. They were all
Yeah,
superintendents.
yeah. But we were like, we are so out of our league here, but they welcomed us at the table, educated us. They're excited about us being there. All of them.
Krista probably got an email later
Mentioned-
that was like, get control of your board members.
I mean, just,
It was good to hear their conversations.
yes.
And they're seeing the same struggles and they're
Yeah.
finding ways to recognize their teachers and they're
Uh-huh.
finding ways to advocate for funds in small school districts. And we're not alone in the world.
No.
That is what,
That's awesome. I think
When
it's
we're
great.
hearing that
Crash
more
with the
than
small
60%
schools
of-
66% of schools in Oregon are rural school
Yeah,
districts.
Yeah,
not
that
like
was-
ours.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
And
Rural
then-
has its own
I know it's
classification.
like, yeah. It's a
My
little bigger than I was
experience
thinking.
at the first conference, I was nervous. I was nervous to go in with Alcy on my name tag because we had just been through all the dirt. And so I was nervous, like, these people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, all this stuff. We are not alone. There are other schools who are struggling just as hard as our district has. Everybody is so supportive and encouraging, and it was so amazing to collaborate with a room full of other professionals. I mean, we were elected here, but so were all of them, and we are a different set of professionals, I think. And it was awesome. I loved it. And I'm kind of a nerd in like all the classes.
Proud trainer moment.
Well,
Great.
I
No,
did
it's
tell them,
exciting.
I did tell them
Great.
at the last one, how many times people actually walked up to me and said, we're so happy to see you. Cause I do think we've been so disconnected. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, Lori came up to me numerous times, like, oh my God, Krista, I can't believe you brought them. And was like, they're so great.
That's awesome.
So,
No, that's why I was goading you guys to go.
Yeah,
Yeah, you guys were in the house. It was awesome.
yeah, I had a pretty rough weekend, but we'll leave that alone.
Any other thoughts from the OSBA conference?
Stuff still hurt last week. I took like 4 weeks.
Oh, I think that was awesome.
So you got notes for us?
Crazy.
I mean, yeah, I'm just listening.
I know, but and I took some
When's
notes
our next
too.
board meeting?
Next
week,
Thursday, man.
Next
Ah,
Thursday,
shit. I knew it. I'm sorry.
at 7.
Not
But
you
it
guys. believe
should
me.
be actually a pretty nice one, right?
This one, I'm gonna tell you, won't be as, this will be a quick, not as heavy lift. January is gonna be a pretty heavy lift. Cause we're gonna do our audit in January and
Can we
early
move that
literacy
right to the third
application.
week of January or something, or is it still the
I
second?
am
Which one
loving
did we move?
the new
Right.
literacy
Move-
framework
move
that's
it to
coming.
Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, Wednesday.
I'm so glad you are.
My,
Wait
just
till
so
I
you guys
write my
know, like, I mean, it's not a,
Like,
it's not a bad thing in my life.
I guess
but my
I'm
schedule's
not
crazy 'cause I
necessarily
picked up
thrilled
some new
about the
surgery,
process
so
that you
it's
have
like,
to go
oh,
through.
I think the
I am,
the ending is great.
well, and the foundation that they're setting, that they stated in the seminar that I went to, that they are looking at revamping the requirements of a teacher to meet some of these expectations to start that foundation, where honestly, there were teachers. The lady that presented said she started out as a teacher and she literally had to go back to a private training to learn how to teach reading. That's mind boggling to me, when that is one of the core foundations of learning.
That's because there's been 2 legs.
So I'm excited to see that they're finally putting all the pieces together and they're gonna lay the foundation to build literacy success, which will create success in math
Yeah,
and
like-
science and
I mean,
everything.
this was all news to me that you didn't have to like have an actual like teaching degree to teach in Oregon. I
Well-
wasn't aware of that until like just like 2 weeks
Of your
ago.
charter school.
But even the teaching degrees literally only teach like a small little paragraph about some of the reading learning disabilities that they exist.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well,
the-
I'm not
the-
aware of that, but
And it's just mind boggling.
I just had really great teachers growing up, and I always thought they'd always be great. And then
Well, and I
Yeah.
think it came in during COVID. You don't have a lot of teachers, so you need to get
Yeah.
teachers, because, you know, I had to tell somebody once, so if I don't have a first grade teacher, I don't get to say, oh, I don't want a first grade classroom. You still have to put, and so we were like, okay, we gotta put somebody in there who looks great. Now, charter schools, I'll be honest with you, charter schools have a lot more leeway. You can put somebody in who does not have even a bachelor's degree,
Yes.
who has never taken training before.
well, yeah.
So we're working.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But the fallout of that is bad.
No, I
It
don't-
is.
I mean,
Agreed.
believe me, because that's why I came to a school board meeting last year to complain. and
But I
got
guess I
silenced
think
by her
that is
students. So I
what
ran for
is-
the board, so she couldn't shut me up anymore. She still shuts me up.
I think if that foundation and that map is set from the education of the educators, how can you fail?
Well, and we talk a lot about in teacher school. I'll be honest with you, when you look at teaching math, they maybe take 1 or 2 classes. That's like teaching elementary math. And so you're, you know, and then we're like, and here's everything you have to teach. So it really There's also a lot of conversations talking about how do you revamp it in colleges.
Mhm.
And then like, for example, the science of reading is huge. And so
It's
one of the
huge.
things we're going to hugely look at is that PD training for our teachers to really, especially those young kids, because we know they didn't get it in there. So that's part of that early literacy piece. but-
Mhm. No, and I'm very
Well-
excited about that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a lot of work, probably gonna cost a lot of money. From bottom up, it's gonna cost, teachers more to get their degree because it's gonna be more time, more credits. I mean, it's a reality. Our wages are gonna have to go up, all the things, but it's gonna be worth it.
Did you see the box of goldfish at the store? That's now 2/3 the size it used to be for the same
Yeah,
price.
yeah.
Good luck with the wages going up. They're never gonna meet inflation.
I'm gonna hold us to time.
I wish we could have better paid
Um,
teachers, so that'd be great.
Maybe as long as there's nothing else about the OSBA convention, then we
All right.
adjourn at
Peace.
20:43. Thank you, Deb. Please feel better.
Yes, thank you. Have a good night, guys.